All right, let's get it. Drive time, Friday afternoon. 8 minutes past the hour, 2 o'clock. What a gorgeous day to cap off a gorgeous week. We've had spring-like conditions all week long. And as it is, every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. We are out and about today at Tim Dahle Nissan. The Tim Dahle Auto Group, our good friends. The address is 4528 South State Street. Real easy to find. Just put that address in your GPS. ESPN 700 van is right out front. Happy Friday to you. Congratulations. You made it. Weekend time. What a beautiful week we've had. And we have a jam-packed Friday show for you guys right now. Now, get a new ride from Tim Dahle Auto Group. Tim Dahle is making room for the 2025 models, so all 24 models must go. During their year-end clearance event, you can get behind the wheel of your dream car or truck or SUV. They've got EVs in stock as well. Great deals going on. Be starting the new year with a big win, and with Tim Dahle's Forever Warranty, it's a real thing. It's a forever warranty. It doesn't happen in very many places, if any at all, here at Tim Dahle. So it is a forever warranty. It's a win-win. You can thank Tim Dahle Ford Infinity, 3 Nissan, 2 Mazda locations. Think Tim Dahle Auto Group. Come on by and say what's up. Jam-packed Friday show. Good to have you with us on this Friday afternoon. The Utah Jazz welcome in a couple of old friends tonight as the Minnesota Timberwolves roll into town. The Jazz were off last night, but a fun night of NBA basketball last night. Stephen Wardell Curry, how about 56 points for Steph last night? Incredible performance. Golden State Warriors are 7-1 after acquiring Jimmy Butler, and the LA Lakers are 8-2 since acquiring. No, that's not right. It says that. It doesn't feel like he's played 10 games. But anyway, the Lakers beat the Timberwolves last night, so the T-Wolves roll in on the second out of a back-to-back. The Phoenix Suns continue to spiral in the wrong direction. And a really, really fun game in Milwaukee saw the Bucks get the Nuggets. So a fun night of NBA basketball last night. And we've got a good night of NBA hoops tonight featuring the Timberwolves and the Jazz here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah at the Delta Center for a 7:30 tip. College hoops will dominate the weekend landscape, both locally and nationally. BYU looks to continue their winning ways. They've won 5 straight Big 12 games, and that is the longest Big 12 winning streak that they have had, even though it's only been 2 years. BYU's already won 20 games. They're 11-6 in conference play, and they welcome in the team to the Marriott Center, who they beat to start this winning streak. West Virginia is in town coming up tomorrow night at 8 o'clock on ESPN2. University of Utah will get back at it as well. Only a few games left for the Utes. Obviously, the storyline this week has been the news that Craig Smith was relieved of his duties as Utah's head coach. We'll get to some of the latest thoughts and the latest rumors about who could take that job next. Arizona State rolls into the Huntsman Center. It's a 5 o'clock tip coming up tomorrow night. I would encourage you, if you have some free time tomorrow, to head on up to the Huntsman Center and give these young men your support. I'm sure it's been an emotional week for them. I'm sure it's been a difficult stretch for them. Then on the 4th, March 4th, coming up next week, it'll be West Virginia in town. And Utah finishes off their regular season schedule. I'm not sure if any postseason plans are going to be possible, but BYU will be the final game down in Provo on March the 8th. And it's going to be a tough one for the Utes, man. Kevin Young, Brigham Young, they have been on fire. And the Utah women welcome in Brigham Young coming up tomorrow at 1:30. So a jam-packed day of college hoops tomorrow. The women have lost 2 of their last 3 to 2 really good teams, Oklahoma State and West Virginia. Try to get back at it coming up against BYU tomorrow. So a lot to do. Some local players showing out at the NFL Draft Combine. We have some NFL offseason news. Matt Stafford has agreed to a restructured deal with the Rams. And could Aaron Rodgers simply not move and play football next year in New York, but for the Giants instead of the Jets? So a lot to do. A lot to do on the program today. Great to have you with us. Royale Salt Lake will try somehow, some way to get on track coming up tomorrow against a really good Seattle Sounders team. Seattle made a lot of offseason additions. Craig Weibel is the general manager in Seattle. He spent a ton of time down here in Salt Lake. He's the man that's credited with finding Demir Krylock and others. So it's going to be a tough test as RSL is waiting for reinforcements. So we'll do a little RSL on the program today as well. Good guest list on this Friday afternoon, live from Tim Dahle Nissan at 4528 South State Street. It's their year-end clearance. So come on by and say what's up. Get a great deal on a vehicle price to move. Our first guest right out of the gates will be the man who I think is going to be wearing the captain's armband for RSL this year. Emeka Eneli will be our first guest right out of the gate. Shout out Nate Bench. Then we're going to move over to Howard Beck, hippest writer around, NBA writer around at 3 o'clock, our friend from The Ringer. And then we'll welcome in Paul Pugmire for a little bit of golf. As golf season, PGA Tour, they're in the midst of their Florida swing. And as of now, it looks like it's the Cognizant Classic in the Palm Beaches. Oh, Jake Knapp is not in the lead. Man, he had a 59 yesterday, Jake Knapp did. So we'll do a little golf. But the leaderboard is jam-packed with big names down in Florida as the PGA Tour makes their Florida swing. They'll be at Bay Hill next weekend. And I will be at that tournament. Very excited to attend a PGA event. It's something I've never had an opportunity of doing. So after Pug stops by, we'll welcome in Spencer Linton, our friend from BYU TV. Do a little BYU hoops, some Big 12 hoops, maybe some college football, some Big 12 football. BYU has actually started their spring practice on the football side of things as well. And then my guy, my former radio partner, longtime columnist at the Salt Lake Tribune, Gordon Monson, stops by on a Friday afternoon. So Emeka Eneli, Howard Beck, Paul Pugmire, Spencer Linton, Gordon Monson, me, Spence Checketts, live at Tim Daly Nissan, 4528 South State Street. And back in the studio on this beautiful, beautiful Friday afternoon is where we find the producer of this program, Porter Larson, on a Friday. Is it safe to say that Steph Curry might be the greatest point guard in the history of the NBA?
Man, it's a good question. He's on the very, very short list. Whenever this argument comes up, I say LeBron, Magic, those guys are point guards. They're in the discussion. But I mean, it's Chris Paul, it's John Stockton, it's Steph Curry, and it's maybe those guys if you want to have that discussion. And man, he's still doing it at this age, and still plenty of fun to watch.
Yeah, watching that last night was wild. I mean, when he gets going, there are very few players I'd rather watch than Steph when Steph starts doing Steph things. I mean, the Magic are a really good defensive team. Steph Curry scored 56 points on 25 shots. That is just nuts. He went 12 of 19 from three. So, Jazz back in action tonight. Some good NBA, some good college hoops coming up this weekend. Our first guest today will be Emeka Eneli, RSL midfielder. But before we get to Emeka, on this Friday afternoon, courtesy of our good friends at Prize Picks, it is time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
Shout out to Prize Picks. It's the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. Second half of the basketball season is here, and the race to the playoffs is heating up on Prize Picks. Don't miss your chance to cash in. As the league's best fight for playoff positioning, you can download the app today. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use that promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. We good? We good? Prize Picks, run your game all season long. Are we on the radio, Porter? You got me? Okay, sorry. There was a little bit of feedback in the air. We're good. So anyway, download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game all season long. All right, the big news of the week this week certainly has been that the University of Utah are in the market right now for a new head basketball coach for the men's team. And, we've covered this from several different angles, but let's review the latest, kind of where we're at right now, and then we'll go from there. So, obviously, it's been a difficult, kind of topic to cover for a number of different reasons, as I've talked about all week long, and as Tommy Lloyd outlined, the head coach of Arizona, after the Utes were down in McHale. There certainly is a personal side to these things that I think oftentimes we ignore. Even though there are these massive buyouts and massive windfalls and essentially golden parachutes, it doesn't make it any easier for a family when a person loses their job. You got to figure at some point you're going to relocate. Craig is still very young. He's got a lot of coaching ahead of him. And I've said this all week. I'll continue to reiterate it. I don't view this as a Craig Smith issue entirely. But it is a bottom-line, results-oriented business, and Craig knows that as much as anybody. He even said it on the record last year there are some cases, I think, to be made that there are actually signs of improvement here or there and things getting a little bit better here or there. But, ultimately, when you have very powerful people in the ears of the president of the university and the athletic director, which I've been told is definitely the case, it's hard to continue to move in the direction of allowing somebody to build if there are a lot of people behind the scenes that aren't on board with that decision, and namely people around the program that are capable of writing big checks and they help your bottom line economically. Because in this day and age of college athletics, power brokers with deep pockets, they carry a different weight than they used to. And they've always been important. You've always needed you've always needed donors, and you've always needed boosters to make sure that you have everything that you need to keep up with facilities and pay your coaches and pay your administrators and all that stuff. But now, with the ability and the necessity to actually pay your players, your pockets have to be deeper, and you have to be prepared in a way that around the market right now, I'm not sure how many people know if Utah basketball is in a position economically to support whoever the new head coach is. And we don't know who it's going to be, but I can promise you, whether it's Alex Jensen or Eric Spoelstra, or if you resurrect Rick Majerus, it doesn't matter who it is. Any candidate will ask Mark Harlan and Taylor Randall the same question, and that is, am I supported financially? Am I supported economically? And if the answer is we're working on it, they're not going to get their first choice. They might not get their first 3 or 4 choices. I mean, I don't know what the issue was when John Calipari left the University of Kentucky. I think a lot of people were just kind of over the whole, like, we have a ton of talent, but we can't get it done come tournament time. But Mark Pope, by all reports, was like their 5th or 6th choice. And I can't imagine any of that had to do with NIL. I'm sure Kentucky is just fine with it. But if Alex Jensen is going to leave the pros, he has to know that he is set up to succeed wherever he goes, whether it's Utah or anywhere else. I mean, I reported this earlier, and I don't tweet much anymore for a number of different reasons. But I had 2 different sources tell me that this is the final year of Alex's contract with the Dallas Mavericks. And, after essentially being a lifelong assistant coach in the NBA, and Alex, of course, was a G League coach. He was the G League Coach of the Year. I thought Smitty gave us some really good context this week on just how difficult it is to coach in the G League and just how difficult it is to win in the G League. Because ultimately, everybody in the G League does not want to be in the G League. That includes players. That includes coaches. It includes administrators. It includes PR staff. Everybody in the G League is in the G League for an opportunity to, at some point, to get called up to the big leagues, right? And so as a head coach, if you're Alex Jensen, you're dealing with a group of players, a group of young men more often than not, that aren't necessarily thrilled to be playing for you. They're playing for you for an opportunity at some point to be called up to the pros, right? And so ultimately Alex's, his path, he played overseas as a player for about 7 years, made some money in Turkey and in other places as well. Started as a coach in 2007 when he joined Rick Majerus' bench in St. Louis, and then went over to the Canton Charge. As I referenced, he was the G League Coach of the Year, won a G League championship, and then spent an entire decade with the Jazz, starting, I believe, with Ty Corbin, and then when Quinn Snyder took the job. And I think this says a lot about Alex, because Quinn could have Quinn could have filled his bench with anybody who he wanted to, and he could have named any coach as his lead assistant, but he named Alex as his lead assistant. And in 10 years with the Utah Jazz, Alex made a name for himself with really working with big men and the Rudy Goberts of the world, the Derek Favors of the world. And the Rudy story certainly is a massive success, and most of that credit goes to Gobert for sure. But if you talk to anybody down in that organization, if you talk to anybody around the league, they talk about Alex as the conduit to tremendous growth for Gobert, who as a rookie looked like a baby giraffe and could barely get up and down the floor. Then after working with Alex for a couple of years, we're talking Defensive Player of the Year multiple times, All-Stars multiple times. Rudy Gobert's a Hall of Famer. And again, most of the credit goes to Gobert, but Alex deserves a lot of that as well. And then after Will Hardy took over, Alex was in the last year of his contract. And I don't know if it was out of respect. I don't know if it was just like, hey, let's just let him finish out the final year. He spent 1 year with Will, and in that year with Will, Alex was tasked with working with Walker Kessler. Walker a late pick in the first round. And his rookie year, he ended up finishing second in Rookie of the Year voting. And a lot of people, again, around the league and around the organization believe Alex had a big hand in that. And then lands on his feet with the Dallas Mavericks. Dennis Lindsey, who's now with Detroit, spent a lot of time here roster constructing with the Utah Jazz. And he is the one that decided to encourage Dallas to look at Alex Jensen. And that's where Alex has been now for the past 2 years. This is his third year, I believe, on the bench in Dallas. So there you go. I do feel like all of the rumors I've heard and all the things I've read and the things I've heard is that Alex appears to be at the top of the list as far as the candidates to coach the University of Utah basketball program. We've talked about some of the other, candidates as far as the avenue of looking at some of the young coaches in smaller schools, smaller programs that have done a really good job with not a lot of resources. And oftentimes that's the route you go to when it comes to a big program in the Big 12, a P4 program, to find your next head coach, right? And so, we've already seen Mark Harlan go that route. He went that route with Craig. And there are a lot of examples of coaches right now who people that cover the sport believe that it's kind of their turn, right? I guess that's how I'll put that, kind of their turn. After coaching a smaller school with not a lot of resources, they've shown that they can coach. And so does a big program look to make their pockets a little bit deeper and ultimately land on them to coach their program? So that is one route. The other route, of course, is finding a big-name coach who's been on the sidelines for quite some time. That worked for St. John's and Rick Pitino. And then the last route that we've been talking about quite a bit on this show is, do you go the former Ute route? Do you try to restore past glory? Does that do anything for the community, for a program that is badly in need of a shot of life, a shot of adrenaline? Does that do anything for you as a member of this community who cares about Utah basketball? If you're not a season ticket holder right now, and you get an email or you get an alert on your phone that Utah has decided that their next head coach is going to be Alex Jensen, and Alex's bench will be filled with former Utes, namely Andre Miller, who's a G League coach right now, sitting next to him. If you're not a season ticket holder now, my question for you is, will you be motivated to call the basketball office and put a deposit down for tickets next year? Because while that's not the most important thing for a program that has not had a building full consistently for a number of years, that is a very important thing. The fact that there are banners right up top, covering the top of the Huntsman Center ever at all is just a pathetic thing that is embarrassing, quite frankly. I'm not blaming fans for not showing up. You got to have a product that consistently is winning. You got to have a product that is consistently entertaining. And in this day and age, again, I'll finish with this before we catch a break. The bottom line to me is this: it does not matter if it's Alex Jensen, if it's Andre Miller, if it's Richard Pitino. It doesn't matter who it is. Every coach is going to ask Mark, and he's going to ask Taylor Randall, look, do you have what it takes economically, and are you set up financially with an infrastructure that will allow me to succeed? If the answer is not an emphatic yes, even if it's hey, we're kind of growing in that direction, that's not going to be good enough. And there's a lot of ambiguity around whether or not Utah basketball has the money to keep up with the programs in the Big 12. And I'm not even saying keep up with what BYU's doing. I mean, the reports are BYU just wrote a $7 million check to A.J. DeBonsa for 5 months of basketball next year. He's only playing 1 year. He'll be in Provo 5 months. He's walking away with $7 million. And that's a level that I'm not even saying Utah should, try to strive to right away. But ultimately, you've got to be able to keep the players that you like. And Davon Smith going to St. John's, I mean, Davon would have made a big difference for this team this year. Now, I'm told that Utah made a competitive offer, and Utah can't offer Madison Square Garden. They can't offer New York City. But ultimately, in order to get the talent that you need, because I will land on this once again, I don't think this was a coaching issue. I think this was a talent issue on the roster. Not just this year, but pretty much ever since Craig has taken over. Now, the hard part is, as the head coach, you've got to wear that too. How much of that is Craig's inability to recruit? How much of that is Utah's inability to pay players? I honestly don't know. But whatever the head coach brings to the table as far as his pedigree, it has to be matched equally by the program economically in order to support him with the infrastructure in place. So no news. I don't think we're going to hear any news as of right now, and the Utes still have some games to play. And I will repeat, Arizona State coming up tomorrow, 5 o'clock, Huntsman Center. Let's do what we can to get up there and show these young men that we appreciate their efforts during a very, very emotional week and a very, very emotional situation. All right, we're live today at Tim Daly Nissan. They're open until 8 o'clock tonight. So if you can't get here during the show, we'll say goodnight about 6. You can get here after work about 8 o'clock. It's 4528 South State Street. So come on by and say hi. All right, coming up on the other side, the dynamic young midfielder from RSL and the man who I think is going to be wearing the captain's armband this year, Emeka Anelli. Shout out Nate Bench. He'll stop by. Then it's Howard Beck, Paul Pugmire, Spencer Litton, Gordon Monson. Off and running on a Friday. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, we're live today at Tim Daly Nissan. It's 4528 South State Street. Got off to a little weird start to the show, got a little loose. Was trying to say donors and boosters and landed on a word right in between, but we're going to move on because it's Friday and it's beautiful outside, and RSL is in action tomorrow. Our next guest, midfielder for Real Salt Lake. It's always a pleasure to catch up with Emeka Anelli on a Friday afternoon. Emeka, happy Friday, buddy. How we doing?
I'm doing well. Happy Friday to you as well.
Thanks for the time, man. First of all, tell me about your off-season experience. And, no big deal, Emeka. You had your first call-up for the U.S. men's national team. So tell us about it, man. How was it?
Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, I got the email, I guess, that I was going to be called into camp, I think, just a little bit before Christmas. So it was a nice little Christmas gift. And then obviously the camp, early January for 2 weeks. It was a great experience, to meet some of the players, some of the best domestic players in the MLS, some of the best coaches, and the coach that, Chelsea, PSG, other top places, Spurs, and just to be coached by them for 2 weeks. It was a great experience.
I've got to know, what is it like in that moment when that email spills in? Like what goes – because I know that you and anybody that has grown up playing at a high level, this is like the ultimate dream, right? Like the ultimate goal is to represent your country. And obviously I know you have World Cup aspirations and we're all pulling for you to make that squad. But when that email spills in and you realize that that dream is coming true, Emeka, what's that like?
Yeah, it's hard to put it into words, honestly. Like you get it, and I had to double check the email to make sure, it wasn't like it wasn't fake or anything like that, because I was just, so excited, and just like a surreal moment. It was fantastic.
Well, we're very happy for you. Let me ask you, what playing against, because we've had a lot of players here in our market, Kyle and Nicky and guys went to the World Cup. And even prior to that, it was Clint Mathis and Eddie Pope. And they always would talk about how playing for the national team on that level helped them when they came back to play in MLS. How can these experiences help you be a better player for your club?
Yeah, I think whenever you're playing with top-level players, you just kind of take some experience from them and bring it back to the club level. And I think it also just gives you an added sense of confidence when you come back to the club level after playing with, some of the players at the national team who have been dominating it in the MLS for many, many years. Some that came from Europe came back, like Tim Ream. I'm playing with them, and then obviously coming back to here at RSL. It just gives you a sense of confidence when you're on the field, and when you have that, you really just play with a sense of freedom, and can really show your true talent. So I felt it since I've been back for the past, 2 or 3 weeks. I've just felt more confident on the ball, more confident in my decisions, and just more confident in everything that I'm doing here at RSL.
So, Emeka, you've been asked to do a lot of things in just a couple of years here with RSL, playing a couple of different positions and, carry a few different roles. Can you play striker? Do you have that in your back pocket?
I actually did play striker in college, so I probably could.
Well, I mean, obviously tongue-in-cheek, because I know Pablo likes you where you're at. But I got to know, from a player's perspective, the front office decided to jettison players that represented 42 goals and 29 assists last year. And as of now, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anybody who's on the roster now, but as of now, fans and RSL supporters just waiting for reinforcements to come along after guys like Chicho and Andres and Crooks and Anderson were moved on. Is there frustration mounting among the group that the front office decided to get rid of the bulk of your attacking options and hasn't necessarily brought in a ton of reinforcements yet?
I don't think necessarily. I think it's still super early in the season. We've only played 3 games really, and I think we're more focused on the process and creating those chances. Because I honestly think in the 3 games that we've had, we've created a decent amount of chances. In the first game in Costa Rica, we missed 3 or 4 big chances. In San Jose, I think we had an XG of almost 2, but we obviously didn't put any in the back of the net. And then on Wednesday at home against the Costa Rican team again, we had 30 shots, 18 shots inside the box, and we only were able to put 1 goal in. So I I don't think it's a personnel problem. I think it's a bit of luck hasn't really been on our side these last couple of games. But I think we're getting into really good areas, and the shots just aren't hitting the back of the net at this point in time. But I do feel like, if we continue to do these things correctly, come Saturday, we'll score plenty of goals. The next Saturday, we'll score plenty of goals. And we'll just continue to work on our craft to, continue to create these chances and then just be more clinical in the box when we have these chances.
So, and well said there. So instead of maybe speaking for you, laced in my question, I wasn't trying to lead you. I'll just ask you, from your standpoint as one of the better players on the roster and one of the leaders with the potential of wearing that captain's armband from time to time, what was your reaction to the moves that the front office decided to make, getting rid of the bulk of the production up top? Like, just tell me how you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously when it happens, like in the moment, it's a little bit shocking just because you don't expect it at that time, but you also understand that things like this kind of happen in the football world, where transfers happen, things happen during the season that people don't see eye to eye on, and, they maybe feel like certain players are a better fit at a different club or don't fit at this club currently. So, like, when it first happened, obviously a little bit of shock. I think everybody had a little bit of shock when it happened. But then, kind of just a couple of days after, a week after, kind of got past it, and we're kind of just focused on how can we now, as a group, as a collective, focus on the future, focus on this new season, because these players aren't going to come back, so it's kind of done and dusted now, and just kind of move on with it.
Tell me, and I guess what I'll say is during training, where a lot of us don't get to see what you guys are doing. So, we've seen the games, and you point out the chances that have been created, but of course, as you know, chances that are created don't do much unless they're capitalized on, and 1 goal in 3 games, as you know, is not going to get it done. So tell me what you're seeing, Emeka, in training from this attacking group, and whether or not you believe that you guys do have the personnel in that area of the field to start scoring goals and getting better results.
Yeah, no, 100% we have it. I mean, I think obviously with both competitions going on, there was a lot of rotation in the squads and the attacking players. Maybe a little bit of a lack of chemistry in that department, but I think in training, the chances we've created in training, they've been finished off. In preseason, I mean, we scored 2 goals in the game, 3 goals, another 3 goals. Everything was falling then, and then we come to the real season, and the chances are missed. So I think as long as we just continue to really focus on the little details in training, finishing off every single attack. If we continuously do that, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, come Saturday, the goals will start to flow in. As long as each day in training, we're continuously hitting on what we need to focus on and continuously focusing on those little details of finishing every single attack. So I do think it's just, a matter of time before the goals start flying in. And like I said earlier, I mean, we played 3 games. We'll probably have with Leagues Cup, another 40 games left in the season. So I think it's just a matter of time.
Is there any silver lining? And I know the answer is probably no, because the CONCACAF Champions Cup tournament is a lot of fun and something that a lot of RSL supporters were excited to witness. It's been a number of years since RSL was in this tournament, and once upon a time nearly won the thing. Now Seattle's the only MLS team to win it. But because you guys did lose in the first round of Mecca, what it means is you do not have these midweek games, as I'm looking at the schedule, for like a month, and maybe even a little bit more than that. You referenced Leagues Cup, that'll come at some point. But is there any silver lining to not having such a crowded schedule as you enter MLS play to try to understand how this new group is going to manifest itself?
I think others outside might say like it could be a positive that we don't have these big games, but I know me personally and the whole team is very, very frustrated with how we went out of CONCACAF Champions Cup, because I mean, I can speak for it myself. I love playing midweek games. I mean, we play for the games. We don't. maybe we don't like training as much as we like the games. Obviously, we like to play for the game. So if we have a game Wednesday, Saturday, it's better for me. It's better for the team. Everybody likes to compete in that aspect. So I mean, not really a silver lining. I'm really disappointed. Yeah, nothing we can do about it now. But I just wish we took our chances better on Wednesday. Hopefully, it's just something that we can learn from and continue to grow on throughout this season.
What was Pablo's message to you guys after that? Because I mean, it was gutting. You guys were on your way, and to your point about the chances, I felt like another couple of goals were coming, and then boom, just a rough turnover. Nelson had a rough turnover. Boom, they score, and then there's a counter. And I'm watching that game, Emeka, and I'm just stunned. I can't imagine how you guys felt. What was the message from your head coach after that match?
Yeah, he was pretty disappointed as well because it was there for the taking, and we just didn't grasp the moment. So I think he was just reiterating, the points on we have to just show up every single day, before the match and training, and just put our best foot forward in every single aspect that we're doing, so that little lapses of judgment or focus don't happen on Wednesdays when we have games or on Saturdays when we have games. And he made it very clear and very apparent that things like that cannot happen going forward in the future. So it's, again, I hate to say it, a learning moment, because it's something that really frustrates me, losing that game. But it's just something that, with how long the season is, with how many games we have, it is something that we just have to learn and grow from, and go with that. Yeah.
So ultimately, when it comes to the strikers on the roster, and we're still getting to know, Forrester and the Peel kid, it seems like, there are rumors that additions are kind of on the way in that space. But one of the things, and, we have Kurt on, we have Jason on, we have Pablo on, a lot of people are talking about, where will the goals come from? Well, not all the time it has to come from the striker, right? It can come from the group. So if we remove, because all the attention right now, Emeka, is lack of goals, so what's going on with the number 9 spot. But if we remove that, which of course you can't entirely because it's such an important spot, is there enough support with the midfield, with Mark Zook and Diego, that you guys maybe can overcome the lack of a seasoned striker to get goals from other places, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you obviously saw what Diego can produce last year. I mean, he had plenty of goals, plenty of assists. Obviously, Diogo and Dominic came in halfway through the season and were finding their legs. And then this preseason, they've been amazing, scoring goals, assisting goals. So they all have the quality, And I think without like a season 9, it's going to be a group effort, with goals and assists, and all of them. Diego, Diogo, Dominic, Lachlan, Wolfie. I mean, they can all provide it, and I've seen them all provide it in some of the preseason games we had, in trainings. So very confident in their ability to definitely keep up the goal contribution.
Do you guys follow, because every time I fire up, one of these websites with transfers, there are rumors that RSL's in the mix to either make a move to get an MLS striker or bring somebody in from overseas. Do you guys in the locker room follow this, or is it just like you got to focus on what's in front of you?
I'm kind of focused on what's in front of you, but obviously, if you're on social media, you'll probably come across it, but it's not something that we really linger on or react to, because it's so normal in soccer, for things like that to happen, for transfers to happen. So we'll see it, but it's not anything like, nobody really makes a big deal about it or anything. It's kind of just, okay, we see it, and then kind of just get on with our day, get on with the training, and focus on the task at hand to hopefully, win on the weekend.
This might be an odd question, but do you want to see reinforcements added? Are you guys anxious to have more experience and seasoned players in that spot up top in number 9?
It's not really my place to answer, but I think it's just, you always want to have top level players on your team, in whatever position that is. So wherever we can get players to just strengthen our team overall, I'm for it, you know, because that not only raises our team, you know, when we play on the weekends, but then competitively in trainings, you know, we're trying to push each other to be better. So it's always good when, you know, you have when any type of player is added to a squad, 'cause it just raises the level, you know, and the competitiveness within the squad.
You, young man, are good at this. That is a seasoned veteran answer at the ripe old age of 25. That's exactly the way you should handle that question. I'm very impressed, which leads me to this next question, which is it feels like Pablo and Kurt and Tony, and I could keep going. It seems like you're viewed as a leader on this group, on this roster with this group, even though you're only 25 years old. So I don't know who's going to wear the captain's armband all year. We had Pablo on, and he said you're certainly a candidate. Have you been told whether or not that armband is yours, and what sort of leadership role are you asked to take, even though you are 25 in year 3 in MLS?
Yeah, I'll be wearing it, but I think it's, you know, it's only my third year, but I think I've learned a lot in these 3 years, and you know, I think leadership is just an evolving and a growing thing that you have to take with it, you know. So I think previously, I think my first year and my second year, I think I led very well by example. You know, my actions on the field, my actions off the field. I think I set a great example for everyone at the club, you know. But I think, especially in year one, I didn't really have as much of a voice. In year two, definitely grew in that department, and even now, continuously trying to grow to lead with my voice. You know, because I think there's many different ways to lead. You know, with your voice, by example. You know, personal relationships. So it's just, you know, there's not one tool that can lead everybody. So it's just continuously to build my toolbox in this leadership role to help the team in whatever way succeed. You know, and I also want to say that it's not just me. You know, we have other fantastic leaders on the team. You know, Jay Glad, Rafa, Phillip, Diogo, who are, you know, all leading as well. You know, I think the best teams are the ones where everyone on the team is a leader. You know, you can turn to your left, you can turn to your right, and everyone there is trying to lead each other and holding each other accountable. And I think that's what we've set that culture so far. So I think it's something that's been going pretty well, and it's just something that, you know, we want to continue with and grow with throughout the season.
What are your personal goals, aspirations, soccer dreams? You know, I had Diego on last year. I straight up asked him the same question, and he wasn't shy. He said, I want to play in Europe. And, you know, at the age of 25, Emeka, you got a lot of soccer in front of you, and I know you're focused on where your feet are at now with RSL, but when you dream as big as you can dream for your soccer life, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think I would love to play in Europe. You know, obviously, people always look at the age thing because I'm a little bit older. And, you know, if the timing's right, but, you know, I would love to play in Europe if the stars align the right way, if the cards fall the right way, you know, and things go well. It's definitely been a dream of mine. You know, I always love watching European soccer, but, you know, really just focused on what I'm doing today and tomorrow to hopefully get me to that point, you know. So just really focus on the ins and outs week in and week out, you know, and then if a conversation has to be had of, you know, me going elsewhere or things like that, then it'll be had when it's the right time, you know.
Emeka, please do not refer to 25 years old as old, okay? I sprained my ankle in the shower at my age, so you're not old, young fella. You got a lot of good soccer ahead of you. Last thing before I set you loose, tell us, going into tomorrow, and look, as you referenced, it is early. Nobody's panicking. Well, I shouldn't say that. Your fans are a little concerned after, you know, getting stomped by San Jose and losing in the CONCACAF Champions Cup first round. So while it is early, tomorrow does feel like there's a little bit of weight and a little bit of pressure from your fan base to show that the first 3 games aren't who you are, and to back up your point about chances created to get them finished in order to have a good showing. So what's the mentality as you welcome in a Seattle team that made a lot of big-time acquisitions during this offseason?
Yeah, Seattle team's obviously a really good team. You know, a lot of attacking pieces, but I think it's just more of the same from us. You know, we're always going to have that fight and that determination every single match. And then, especially at home, I think last year at home we played pretty well most of the time. I think we got a lot of results. I think we maybe only lost once or twice. So it's just trying to uphold that standard of never to lose at home. So I think we've prepared the right way. We've had the right mentality and trainings, and now it's just time to go out there on Saturday at 2:30 and show what we've been doing. And obviously, I know some of the fans have been disappointed with the results that we've had the last 3 games, but we pushed those to the past. We're just focused on the task at hand on Saturday, and it will be better, than the last 3 games that we've had. So yeah.
Mecca, you're the man. Congratulations on the call-up. Congratulations on the captain's armband, and best of luck tomorrow, okay?
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Emeka Anelli, RSL's captain. There you go. We were wondering who it was going to be, and Emeka announces that it is him. He's going to be wearing it. So, RSL Seattle tomorrow, kind of an underrated rivalry game. Craig Weibel, former RSL GM, is up there. Albert Rusnak, former RSL star, is up there. 2:30 kick. If you're looking for something to do on what should be a pretty beautiful Saturday afternoon, head over to rsl.com for tickets, and let's pack that place. And hopefully the lads, we're here for the lads, play a little bit better. All right, we're live today at Tim Dahle Nissan. Come on by and stop by. It's 4528 South State Street. They're open until 8 o'clock tonight. Get a new ride from Tim Dahle Auto Group. It's making room for the 2025 models. So all the 24 models must go during their year-end clearance event. You can get behind the wheel of your dream car. They've got trucks, SUVs, EVs as well in stock. So come on by. Going to be starting the new year with a big win with Tim Dahle's Forever Warranty. Tim Dahle Ford Infiniti, 3 Nissan locations, 2 Mazda locations. Think Tim Dahle Auto Group. So right now they got special financing as low as 0%. You don't have to pay anything up front. 0 money down, 0% financing, and no payments for 2 months. You can essentially get a free car for a couple months while you figure out the payments. End of the month, best time to buy. So come on by. Open till 8 o'clock tonight at Tim Dahle Nissan. It's 4528 South State Street here in Salt Lake City on a beautiful Friday afternoon. All right, 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Howard Beck joins us coming up next, and it's Paul Pugmire. That's your 3 o'clock hour of the program. Happy Friday to you. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, we're live today at Tim Daly Nissan here in Salt Lake City. It's 4528 South State Street. It's their year-end clearance event. Even though it's February, they've extended it. Special financing as low as 0% and no money down, no payments for 2 months. So if you're in the market for a car, come on out and say hello. It's 4528 South State Street here in Salt Lake City. Our next guest knows Salt Lake City is a small town. Called it small town last week. Let's welcome him in, Howard Beck, on a Friday afternoon. Howard, happy Friday. Which large city do we find you in on this Friday afternoon?
I am happily ensconced in the borough of Brooklyn in traffic on my way to the arena, where I will see a barn burner between the Nets and Portland Trail Blazers, who also hail from a small city, by the way.
Okay, if Portland's it was the town thing that got me, the small town. If Portland's a small town, I think that's fine with us out here in Salt Lake.
I love all the small towns equally, as you know.
Oh, I know you do. Well, if you're in traffic in Brooklyn, we get you for what, 45 minutes to an hour today on a Friday?
According to the Lyft driver's mapping, we're 6 minutes out, which means it'll actually be 15.
Okay, fair enough. Well, let's get into it then, because obviously time is of the essence. So I wanted to get your take on some comments LeBron made about, Anthony Edwards said doesn't really care to be the face of the league. And LeBron, I'm paraphrasing, said, well, who would want to be the face of the league when everybody who talks about the league just takes a bleep on it on a daily basis? So I think this is an interesting topic for somebody like you, because you'll be good with it. I think there are a lot of things to criticize right now with the modern day and age of the way that the business of basketball is being run. I get feedback, and I have a sense, and it's a league I love, it's a game that I love, that most people feel like the modern day NBA is run like a Fortune 500 company that only cares about creating value for shareholders. Now, look, I'm a grown-up. I know this is a front-facing, revenue-generating entertainment product, but does LeBron have a point, or is he reacting a little bit in a soft way as it pertains to a league that sometimes deserves to be criticized?
There's a lot of different pieces of this that are worth talking about, and a lot of different paths we can go down. So I'll give you my first reaction to what he said, and then we can hit the other parts of it if you want. But let me start with this. I'm glad you asked, because one of the things LeBron said, the thing that struck me most, is the thing about why would you want to be face of the league when everybody's always basically crapping on it and all this, and just feeling like if you're the face of the league, as he has been, you put yourself in a position where you are just in the crossfire every day. I get that part of it, but to me what it speaks to is something that has been a growing concern of mine for a very long time, going back years, which is that players today feel that kind of criticism and feel that kind of siege from what they believe to be the capital M media, because they are flooded every day with, whether it's TV debate shows or maybe it's some podcasts, radio, Instagram commenters, Twitter commenters, anybody. They are constantly feeling like everybody's just kind of criticizing them all the time, and then they put this on the capital M media and then lump everybody together. The reason I view it that way, or am concerned about it from that standpoint, is there are a lot of us who cover the league, and LeBron actually used that phrase, those you people who cover the league are the ones, crapping on us every day. The vast majority of us who are covering the league, especially as reporters, beat writers, are not the ones he's actually talking about. It's the TV debate shows. It's people on Instagram. It's aggregation accounts that just take things out of context and then use it to tee off on people. It's all this other stuff. The people who are dedicating the most time and effort to reporting and writing and actually going into the gym, actually going to practices and shoot-arounds and games, doing the job that I used to do for 16 years, which is, be a beat writer covering a team from start to finish, all 82 games plus playoffs. Those are not the people who are firing off takes and living on the hot take economy. And my concern as a 28-year writer covering this league, my concern as president of the Pro Basketball Writers Association, is that we have a growing problem where players view just this big noise machine as one big conglomerate, and it's not. It's hundreds, maybe thousands of voices, but we are taking the brunt of this, because what's happened is it makes it harder to cover the league when players are always on the defensive or cut off or too reticent to give their time and their thoughts because they fear being in the next spin cycle. And that is a problem, and that is a massive concern of mine.
So, what's fair to be critical of, in your opinion? Because yes, to your point, when these players are hearing a million different voices and they're on social media, they're on Instagram, they're on Twitter or Blue Sky or whatever, and they are in their echo chamber and the algorithm feeds them, whatever it does, and suddenly, a very small group of people in their mind represents all of us, right, that cover the league, and then suddenly we're all thrown in the same category. But as I referenced, I do believe there are things that are very fair to criticize, and I think there are things that are fair to criticize with the way LeBron at times handles himself for all of his brilliance. So your points are well taken, but I will ask you, what is fair to criticize, in your opinion, about the modern-day approach of NBA players and the way the league is run now?
I'm not trying to be cute here, Spence. I don't know how to answer that because everybody has their own view of what might be wrong with the league or what needs to be improved or what they think is broken or whatever it may be. I've got my views of it. You and I have had various discussions over the months and even years about how we view certain aspects of the league and the state of the game. What's fair? I mean, everything's fair. It's not that anything is off limits to criticize, although, times people get a little too personal or a little mean-spirited or so hot-takey that they lose track of the fact that these are human beings playing this game. But also I would separate, the criticism of, the game writ large, the league and what the league is doing at a given time, changes it's making, or the quality of the product. That's a different case or a different issue than how the players are feeling about being ripped apart on a maybe sometimes daily basis by some people who, again, have no interest in it other than their ability to market their takes.
Do you think any of this has to do directly with the way that some of the inside guys handle it, the inside the NBA on TNT, which is still, in my opinion, the most entertaining studio show out for any sport, not just pro basketball. But it seems like there's a lot of players now that don't necessarily appreciate some of the guff they get on that show. Do you think any of it's steeped with the inside stuff?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's everything. I don't think it's any one thing. And I don't want to, get into names of various on-air personalities on any of the networks, but there are people who obviously have made a living off of just, firing off takes on players and sometimes taking it to illogical or unfair extremes. And, that is unfortunately the media landscape we live in right now. I don't know. You have to ask LeBron. I don't know whether he's referring to Turner inside the NBA, whether he's referring to ESPN, whether he's referring to Fox debate shows. I don't know. I think this is less about how the game is being talked about in terms of what he said than the way he's been talked about. I think he was referring to his own experience as the face of the league.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Hey, Porter, will you effort LeBron? Let's get LeBron on to kind of ask him. We'll get him on to ask him directly, obviously tongue-in-cheek. Now, look, I'll tell you what, Howard, not everybody covers a league through the prism of negativity. And the last couple of weeks, I have turned on basketball, and I have watched basketball players seem to care about playing basketball. And it is a reminder. Look, maybe this is just the world of basketball now, that we all should just say, look, we'll talk to you after the All-Star break. We'll hit you up in late February, early March. But the past couple of weeks, when these guys have been locked in, it is a reminder of what this league looks like and what this sport looks like when the best players are playing hard with a purpose.
I mean, there were great games in October, November, December, too. So I don't know. I do think that there is such a thing as the dog days of the season, especially January. I do think that when we get back from the All-Star break, and it's not even the midway point. It's beyond the midway point. There's usually like 30, 35 games left. And when the teams that especially know they're locking in for the postseason and have, the spring to look ahead to, and it's getting closer, it certainly brings a different level of focus and intensity. But we were all raving about certain games back, and I'm trying to remember, there was a bunch involving the Warriors, some involving the Thunder, Like there were good games earlier in the season. Like I'm not sold on the idea that suddenly the whole landscape changes the second we get back from the All-Star game. But the problem is in the context of the bigger conversation here. People's complaints about the league might be that, we don't think guys play hard on a given night, or maybe, because they didn't play hard in the All-Star game, or it's guys are load managing too much or whatever. Like, there's bits and pieces of all of this, and everybody's got a little bit different version of what's bothering them about the league at any given time. And so I don't know which part of that is the one that needs to be focused on. All right, I'm getting out of the car here real quick. Hold on a sec.
All good. Howard Beck is our guest, one of my favorite writers. He's joined my show for a number of years. You can get him on Blue Sky mostly. He is technically on Twitter, but he has been at a number of different places. He always does his job at a high level, and he does his job so well that he's going to see Brooklyn and Portland play tonight in person, which is very impressive. So let me just ask you point blank your opinion then, instead of dancing around it. Do you feel like, from your vantage point, that the league is in a healthy place, as opposed to what anyone else has to say about what does Howard Beck have to say about the current state of the NBA?
I think it's fine, honestly. I really do. The game has changed, and some people don't like the way the game has changed stylistically. The load management part of it is an absolutely legitimate issue and concern, especially for fans who pay a lot of money, go to a game. I'm bringing my daughter to a game soon, and I don't want to say which game I'm against who, but like I'm sitting there going like, are the players that I'm hoping are going to play that night going to be there? Because I have to worry about it the same way as anybody else does, right? I bought tickets. That's a serious concern, and the NBA, they've tried to deal with it. We know that it was starting last season when they instituted all these rules to try to make sure that players were playing more often than not and not abusing the latitude that teams have to rest guys. So those are issues, but the state of the game, honestly, it's fine. Like I think it mostly depends on who you're rooting for. Like Thunder fans are thrilled with the state of the game. Sixer fans probably not so much. Suns fans probably a bit depressed right now. The Nets fans that I'll see in here tonight, they're just happy that their team is playing their butts off despite not having any stars. And they're hoping for lottery balls. Like I don't think the game is in crisis. I think that has been wildly overstated based on some early ratings data earlier in the season, a lot of which has kind of evened out. It's still down, but it's not down dramatically. And the league locked in a $70 billion media rights deal. Like that goes back to your view of like the cynical take of like, yeah, it's just a business and they're just accruing value. And I think there's something to that. But I don't know where the crisis is here.
All right, I will ask you, because I often ask you these philosophical questions on how to fix certain issues, because I was talking to, and your point about who you cheer for and where you're at currently as it pertains to your opinion of the state of the league is really good. And obviously out here, there are a lot of people that are frustrated that we're in year 3 of this rebuild, and we focus on the good stories when they manifest. Walker Kessler had a great game the other night against Delmo Sabonis, and there's some stuff with Isaiah Collier and Keontae George that are pretty exciting. But it does feel like every year about a third of the teams are just unserious about winning, and I get it, and certainly out here I get it, and I think the Jazz should have done this 2 years ago, as we've talked about. But is there any fix to this scenario where, and John Hollinger wrote a good piece for The Athletic about this, where you're either in the haves or the have-nots, and it seems like every year about a third of the league has this, this situation where they're not serious about winning, they're trying to develop young players, and then a rebuild is hope that some young players pop, acquire assets, and then hope you get lucky in the lottery. Is this just the NBA, where about a third of the teams every year are just not going to be able to compete with the top shelf teams, so they go young, try to develop, and try to get lucky in the lottery?
I wrote a very long piece last week during the Ringer's NBA expansion week, as we called it. We had a whole pack of stories about it. The idea of expansion has been talked about so much, and it seems to be on the horizon, although, as I reported, I think it's actually 3 to 5 years out still if it happens. But the piece I wrote was about kind of this, which is that there still aren't enough stars to go around, especially when, stars like to join up with each other on given teams, or teams, are able to get them on their own. Stars are a finite commodity. This is a zero-sum game. So we can look at the Jazz or the Nets and the Blazers, two teams I will see here tonight, or the Wizards, and say, well, they're rebuilding. They don't have enough talent, whatever. They're in the have-nots category. They're hoping for lottery balls. They're hoping for something. The fact is, whether you're doing it intentionally or just because that's just where in the life cycle your team is naturally, you're trying to pursue stars that aren't there because they're on somebody else's team. It's a zero-sum game. And we can talk about the fact that there's more talent than ever around the league today than 10, 15, 20 years ago, and there is, but it's not franchise star-level talent. Like the Jazz have Lauri Markkanen, who's a really good player, all-NBA caliber, but that's not enough for them to win enough games to be in the playoff hunt. And, the Nets and the Wizards certainly traded away players to do their rebuilds, but the fact is there's so few true superstars or stars that you can do that and have there still be a bunch of other teams that are still searching for talent as well. This is just the state of things. You can't possibly have 30 teams competitive at the same time, no matter how much Adam Silver has tried to engineer parity. And there is more parity now than there has been in the history of the league. But it doesn't ensure that every team is going to have a chance every season to be a 500 team or a playoff team.
All right, I know you got to go, so let's get a couple of things that are actually going on in the league. Joel Embiid is going to miss the remainder of the season due to a knee injury. And it feels like this was the only course of action for a Philadelphia team that was just spiraling out of control. What's next for Philly? What's next for Embiid?
Who knows what's next for Embiid, because I don't think we really know the true extent of his knee problems, and he is notoriously private about his health and about whatever's going on at a given time. So the Sixers are not very forthcoming on these things and haven't been because Embiid doesn't want them to be. Which is his prerogative, but it's frustrating if you're a Philly fan and you have no idea whether he's ever going to be himself again. So we don't know the answer to that. And if he's never himself again, and he just signed a massive extension last summer, they are screwed for the foreseeable future on that alone. On top of that, they signed Paul George to a max 4-year deal, and he's on the downhill slide too. So they're shutting down Embiid is the practical thing to do from a health standpoint, probably, but it's also the practical thing to do from a draft standpoint, because they owe a pick to Oklahoma that is top 6 protected. So if the Sixers pick lands in the top 6, the Sixers get to keep it. If it's 7th or later, it's going to Oklahoma. So the insult to injury here for Philadelphia is that their season's already toast. Embiid is on the shelf, and if the pick is 7th or lower, it's going to Oklahoma instead of them getting the benefit in Philly. So it is in their best interest to shut down everybody at this stage. Do whatever you have to do. Take the fines from the league, but do everything possible to have the worst record possible. And even that doesn't guarantee you anything, because the lottery balls could bounce the wrong way, and it could drop the Sixers to 7 or 8 or 9 or whatever, and they could still lose the pick. So they do need to increase their odds of having a top 6 pick.
All right, before I set you loose, we'll let you get to the game. Who keeps Mark Daigneault up at night the most? Is it Denver? Is it L.A. with those two? Is it Golden State with Jimmy? I mean, Oklahoma State clearly has entrenched themselves as the favorite, but who keeps Mark up at night the most, in your opinion?
Probably Denver, because they've got the best player on the planet in Jokic, and that's a team that won a championship within the last couple of years. I think, look, I'd be the first to say I don't want to face a Luka-LeBron tandem at any time. But supporting cast is a little questionable. They don't have any size. And, Luka's still trying to get his legs back under him. He's not shooting well yet. That'll probably come around. They look pretty good so far, but, let's check back in a few weeks or, a month or so. I don't know that the Lakers, as constructed, have enough to make a run this year. They didn't make that trade for this year. They made that trade for the next 10 years. And, with the Warriors, that one's interesting. Like, they're playing their butts off. They look really good. Steph goes for 56 last night, and Butler's fit in perfectly. They have a little bit better depth and roster balance, the Warriors, than the Lakers do. So I'll put them a notch ahead, but probably it's Denver.
Howard, thank you, my friend. It's always fun. Enjoy that game tonight. I know you will, and we'll chat soon. Thanks, buddy.
I'll try. Thanks, man.
All right, great Howard Beck. Now with the Ringer, spent some time with the New York Times, LA Times, and was a Knick beat writer for a number of years. He's a very talented NBA writer. He's worth your time to listen to and read. We appreciate his time. He technically is on Twitter, which is just his name, at Howard Beck. And from there, you can get the link to Blue Sky, where I think he's posting more now. Or just go to theringer.com and search Howard Beck. Appreciate Howard's time. Yeah, if you missed it, LeBron James was asked about Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis said he's not really trying to be the face of the league. And LeBron said, quote, "Why do you want to be the face of the league when all the people that cover our game and talk about our game on a day-to-day basis bleep on everybody?" Obviously, I didn't ask to be the face of the league. I feel and I understand this is weird energy when it comes to that. And there's been a lot of reaction about it. And as I referenced to Howard, I'm one that has spent my entire life around pro basketball, and I've always enjoyed it. I enjoyed playing as much as I could before, I had to find something else to do because I couldn't keep up with pros. And I enjoy covering it. I enjoy watching it. And it is a different league than it was back in the day. And certainly there's a argument to be made that it's time just to shut up and embrace it. It is what it is. And it is overstated a little bit as far as players not going hard all the time, but it's not entirely overstated. I watch this league a lot, and there are plenty of nights where I'm watching games I'm excited to watch where those guys are nailing it in, man. And then there are plenty of games that I sit down and watch that are awesome. And ever since this league came back from the All-Star break, there have been a lot of games that have been worth watching. Players are showing up and they're playing hard, but we shouldn't have to wait for that to be consistent for like 4 months. Like, show up and do your job, man. You're getting paid a lot of money. The fans show up and they watch, and I do think players have an obligation to fans, even though players don't seem to think that they do. And sometimes they say the quiet part out loud, like Kevin Durant did when he said we don't ever really take into consideration what the fans have to say. And if that's the attitude, you are going to turn a lot of people off. And quite frankly, I think pro basketball has. That's just my opinion. But the Warriors game was awesome last night. The Bucks and the Nuggets played a really good game. Lakers and the Timberwolves played a really good game. And tonight we've got Jazz basketball as Rudy Gobert, Mike Conley, in addition to Joe Ingles and Nickeil Alexander-Walker are back in town with the Minnesota Timberwolves. And it'll be fun to kind of see those guys, and hopefully they get a good round of applause and ovation. I imagine they would. Timberwolves, good team, not a great team, just above 500. Jazz on that first-round pick, so maybe the Jazz try to get a win tonight. 7:30 is your tip time, as the NBA is kind of on the stretch run now. Got Nuggets Pistons, which I wouldn't have said is a good game a couple weeks ago. The Pistons have run off 8 straight games, and I try to oftentimes cover the league and talk about teams that were in the position the Jazz are just a few years ago. Detroit won 8 games last year. They've won 8 straight games right now. And they've got Cade Cunningham. Obviously, it's like Orlando with Paolo. Some of these teams that were rebuilding and now looking a little bit better, well, they've got cornerstones in a way the Jazz just don't. The Cavs are at the Celtics tonight at TD Garden, so that should be a fun one. Clippers-Lakers late-night game at Crypto.com Arena. All right, we are live today out here at Tim Daly Nissan. It's 4528 South State Street. They're open until 8 o'clock, so if you can't get here while we're here until about 6 tonight, you can come by after work if you get off or whatever at 4528 South State Street. They've got special financing. It's their year-end clearance event. Special financing as low as 0%. Zero money down as well, then no payments for 2 months. End of the month is the best time to buy. It's the last day of February. Good riddance, by the way. March is here tomorrow. All right, we will catch a quick break, and coming up on the other side, we will talk about the world of golf. Full Swing is out on Netflix. You guys watching? And the PGA Tour is in the midst of their Florida swing as well, so Paul Pugmire will stop by. Our buddy Spencer Litton from BYU TV will join the program at the 4 o'clock hour. Then my longtime radio buddy and longtime columnist from the Salt Lake Tribune, Gordon Monson, rolls by later on as well. It's a drive on a beautiful Friday afternoon. It's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. Today at Tim Daly Nissan at 4528 South State Street. It's their end-of-year clearance event with special financing available as low as 0%. They're also offering some really nice cars with no money down and no payments for 2 months. So it's a good time to buy a vehicle if you're in the market for it. Come on by and say hi at 4528 South State Street. The sun is shining. It's been a week that feels like spring, and I do believe, Paul Pugmire, we actually have some local tracks open for business this weekend. Yes, sir. Is that right?
There are a few, yep, down in the bottom part of the valley, and actually up in Davis County, Valley View has opened 9 holes to walking only. So there's that.
Don't tease me. Are you going to get out of the Swinger Club this weekend?
Planning on it, yep.
Can you tell me where?
Glenmore.
Good for you. How's the game? How's the game right now?
It's pretty rusty and pretty rickety. I need some work.
I'm going to try to get out to Nibley, play 9 tomorrow and 9 Sunday. I've not swung a club since November, Paul. So what are the main challenges of getting back into it after a number of months off? Because I'm planning on not playing well, but I'm going to try to not get frustrated.
The short game will go first, and it takes a little longer to come back. So if you hit some skanky chips, give yourself some grace. It's kind of the way it's going to go.
Did you say skanky chips?
I did.
I did not know that was a term. I'm going to use that now.
Now, yeah.
Okay. Put a little, Paul Pugmire, our guest, he hosts our golf radio show every Saturday morning. Put a little context on Jake Knapp going low with a 59 round 1 at the Cognizant Classic in the Palm Beaches.
Well, that was great stuff. I was able to catch the last or tail end of it, and he was very calm about it all, which you got to be in a situation like that in order to get over the finish line. But it was really funny. This is at Jack Nicklaus's course, referred to both lovingly and derisively as the Bear Trap, and it has a tradition and a reputation of being very, very hard. But a combination of some overseeding that they did on the grass that made the fairways softer, which makes them play effectively wider, combined with an odd situation of zero wind. The course was playing easy. It was gettable. And by and large, people were complaining about it. And then Knapp comes in with 59, and they say, "See, told you so." And my reaction was, "Well, what'd you shoot?" And nobody got anywhere near him. And so it was the 15th sub-60 round shot in PGA Tour history. The first goes back to 1977 when Al Geiberger did it in Memphis. And then there was like 10 or 12 years before anybody did it again. The sub-60 rounds are coming more quickly now, and there's been 15 of them. It was a great round. 12 birdies, no bogeys, 59. Really, really great.
Follows it up with a 70 round 2 because golf is ridiculous. Tell me about this young man. I don't know much about Jake Knapp. Tell me about him.
Well, he is a winner. He won down in Mexico last year, and but he's also got a really interesting backstory. I appreciate you asking about it. He is a bomber. He generates stupid club head speed, hits it a long ways, and he lost his Korn Ferry Tour card a couple of years. He had no status, and so to pay rent, he was working as a bouncer at a bar. And the reason he took that job was so he could work at night and practice during the daylight hours. And he's a stout young man and filled the role of a bouncer pretty well. But he did that until he got his game back, got his status back, and he made real good use of that time. And he got through the Korn Ferry Tour, got a card, out on tour. He's got a win to his credit, and now he's done this. And he seems like a really good guy. Everybody who knows him says that they like him, and the good guy. So got that.
So we talked to you last week while the Mexico Open at Vedanta World was going on, And Paul, Full Swing season 3 is out, and I'm not through it, but I watched the one last night that featured Rory, and I want to talk to you about the U.S. Open last year. He missed those two short putts, two of the final three holes, and when you see when you see the way Full Swing covered it, it just was even more gutting for him. But he dropped a line. He said, if you only, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was something along the lines of, if you only analyze your golf when it comes to winning and losing, you're in for a career of misery, right? And I was like, oh man, what a line. And that leads me to asking you about Brian Campbell, because my man has 188 starts in the Korn Ferry Tour and the PGA Tour, and he broke through with a win. And it makes golf so unique this way. There's not another sport. Like if you went 0 and 188 in basketball, you're not keeping your job. And he had 188 starts before he got his first win. And one of the things I love about watching the end of these tournaments, when it's a guy like Brian Campbell, who I don't know anything about, is you see him instantly change his life in a moment. And it really is what makes golf unique. What was it like for you to watch this guy? And when he was interviewed afterwards, he just said, it's about my grind. And there were times where I wanted to quit. It's my girlfriend. It's my family. They encouraged me to keep going. But Brian Campbell's life instantly changed last week in Mexico after playing 188 tournaments. Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, you are so right. Look, his obituary's opening paragraph got written. It'll start off saying, PGA Tour winner, Brian Campbell. And you're right. Everything changes from there. And the nature of golf, where the individual has to do everything, really puts the emphasis on winning, just like you just did. A guy can be the 12th player on an NBA team and can contribute and can be there when they win the championship, even if he's not in the headline. But that kind of thing doesn't happen in golf. You got to do it all. You got to do it all yourself, and you've got to do it all at the right time in order to get the win. And I love Campbell's story. It was grind. He's never been a big hitter, and he in the field down at Vedanta, he was the shortest hitter statistically in the field, and yet what did he do? He won. Another thing was, he got just an unreasonably, incredibly good bounce off the trees on the final hole. And he took advantage of it. He paid it off. Now, good bounces happen, bad bounces happen. One's on Thursday we forget about. But this happened on Sunday afternoon with the cameras rolling when everything mattered, and he paid it off. He made it work. And people will remember the bounce, but I hope they also remember the wedge he hit to 6 feet after he got the bounce. That was a great shot, and he made that happen.
Yeah, it was, and that's ultimately what I've learned, over the past 5 years or so, really getting into this and wanting to get better at it, is you have to have that goldfish memory, man. You have to put the last shot behind you. Because when I saw that bounce, I'm like, oh, they're not too different than we are. That looked like me on 4 at Bonneville, that I've hooked it into the trees several times and pray that it bounces back out. But what about the Aldrich Potgieter kid? I don't know much about him. You pointed him out. And, it was pretty fascinating. When they went to the playoff, it wasn't just Campbell who needed some luck. Potgieter, he was just roping everything all tournament long and down the stretch. The moment got a little too big for him, didn't it?
It did get too big for him. Now, one thing to keep in mind about him is that he's only 20. He has not yet experienced any grind. He is the youngest PGA Tour card holder. He's one of these guys who chose to forego college, went straight to the pro game. He's only 20 years old. He can't go in and buy a beer, and he's out there competing for these PGA Tour titles. This is a kid who is the antithesis of Campbell. He just drips talent. He is incredibly strong and fast. He hits the ball a ton. He will make a lot of noise. There's a lot of trophies waiting with his name on it. But he hasn't yet learned how to handle the moment, and I say that with no condemnation. Good land. At 20, I was still trying to figure out how to burp the alphabet. It was – he just hasn't had a chance to figure it out yet, and it showed.
Paul, most of us stopped trying to burp the alphabet at 10. Why were you trying to do that at 20?
Oh, I had bricks for brains. What can I say?
Fair enough.
Yes, I had.
Fair enough. Okay, let me move over to, because again, it's top of mind. I watched the event or the doc last night, and I had forgotten that Tony finished tied for third with Cantlay at the U.S. Open last year at Pinehurst. So great tournament for him. But what was your reaction? And now that it's been a number of months, to the way that Rory just, and I don't want to say fell apart. He just missed two what looked like gimmies. Short putts at the end of two of the final three holes. Rory had like 3-foot putts, and I didn't realize he had hit 483 of the 483 chances he had from 3 feet prior to 16 and 18. I mean, I don't know how you digest that. Now, Rory's been great this year, but let's go back a little bit. What are your memories of watching Rory kind of really just blow it down the stretch there?
Well, the putt on 18 will live forever, which is unfortunate, but it will. And I actually had the unusual good fortune to be at Pinehurst a few months later, and I went out there on 18 and stood over where that putt was. I didn't play number 2, but I played one of the other courses and had a caddy show me exactly where Rory was. And that putt is one that good players are going to miss half the time. It was a brutal putt.
Interesting.
And Rory missed it in the worst possible moment. But part of the story also, it isn't just that Rory missed that putt. It's that DeChambeau, he was hitting his driver all over the county, and he kept getting decent breaks where he could have a shot and hack it back out into play. And if you roll the tape backward 10 minutes, you'll see that he did exactly that, hit it way left on 18, the 72nd hole on Sunday, and just had to bump it up the fairway and to set up an attempt to make par by getting up and down. He hit it a little bit too far and hit it into a bunker, and then he hit one of the greatest shots ever hit in the history of the game. And the 62-yard shot that he hit out of the bunker to 4 feet, that will live forever too. You can take great players and drop them in that same spot and give them 100 balls, and half of them will never get it within 4 feet. But DeChambeau did it in that moment. So it was the combination of all those things coming together. And what can I say? That's the U.S. Open. That's Pinehurst number 2. That's why we pay money to watch him play.
Doesn't feel like too long ago where Bryson, and you know what, in my opinion, it was his own fault, was like villain number 1 in the world of pro golf. I mean, and look, every time he would hold a press conference, he would just come up with some sort of algorithmic mathematic explanation about why he's better and smarter than everybody else. And I just think at some point people are like, dude, we get it, just shut up. But he's really found a way to turn his personal narrative around. Now, I'm not a huge fan, but I learned a lot watching the documentary. Like he lost his father, certainly at a very young age, and that, I think, kind of, I don't know if humbled him or decided to change his focus on what he wanted to do. I don't watch his YouTube channel, but I know millions of people do. But he seems to have gone from this dude that nobody could stand to one of the biggest stars in golf, even though he plays for LIV. What are your thoughts on his ability to change that narrative, and how do you think he's been able to do it?
It's remarkable. And I think that he's been able to do it because he is a guy who absolutely goes off of data. Now, what I mean here in this case is when people are talking to him and saying exactly what you just said, he listened, and he viewed it as data input to be used for analysis and action. And he made changes, and that's a hard thing. A lot of people don't, and they're not willing to, or they can't. And he changed the way he approached things. I am a big fan. I have been since he was at SMU, and I've had a couple of opportunities personally to spend a little time with him and interact with him, and he has been just absolutely golden to me. He's been nothing but really, really good to me. Plus, Tony Finau's former caddy, Greg Bodine is now caddying for Bryson, and I think that's a cool connection for us here in Utah. But he listened to what people were saying, and he realized he needed to make some changes. He used his YouTube channel and his Instagram account to communicate directly with people and to show a different side of himself. And the turnaround in his public persona has been remarkable, and I admire him for it. And he's figured out a way to have fun and to convey fun on his social media. That thing he did, hitting the ball over his house, trying to make a hole-in-one, that was a gas. And I applaud him for it.
Interesting you reference caddies. Episode 4, Full Swing, they entitled it Carrying the Burden. And they followed Scotty Scheffler and Sahith Theegala, and it was really all about their caddies. And you know, ultimately, it was interesting to learn. Like, I didn't know much about Ted Scott, but he was on Bubba's bag when Bubba won a couple of green jackets. And you know, ultimately, just I don't know if it was the live stuff. He just decided to go his separate way to do his own thing, and then received a phone call that changed his life from a young man named Scotty Scheffler. And obviously, when Ted first started working with Scotty, Scotty wasn't the full-baked Scotty that we see now as the best player in the world. But just your experience, your knowledge of how important the right partnership is and the roles that caddies play. Because and one of the coolest things, I can't remember, Scotty won like 70 times. I don't remember which tournament he was where he had, you know, it was the Masters, where he had Ted just make the walk with him after Ted grabbed the flag. But what makes this partnership so rock solid, and what is the secret sauce, Paul, between a great player and a great caddy?
Trust, communication, willingness to be candid in a tense moment, willingness to disagree when that needs to happen as well. It is a central relationship and a central function to the success of a player. Interestingly, it didn't used to be. A couple of generations ago, players used to really treat their caddies as second-class citizens. Just, you know, show up, keep up, and shut up was the mantra. And interestingly, the players who changed that are players whose names we know, and it contributed to their success. And it was Jack Nicklaus with Angelo Dundee, it was Tom Watson with Bruce Edwards, and it was Johnny Miller with Andy Martinez. And those three players really built relationships with their caddies, made their caddies trusted collaborators on the execution of the round, and their record showed it. And then everybody else saw, oh, there's something there, and it's become the norm. But it took great players to make the change, and it's been a very positive change for the game. A caddy now plays a role that coaches do in other sports, but think about it. They're right out there on the field of play thinking through and discussing and helping to execute on the field of play. It's a really important relationship.
I got a kick out of Ted saying he wasn't sure if he wanted to work with Scotty because Scotty had a little fire in him. And, you know, there were clips of Scotty, he threw a putter at one point, and Scotty himself said he would get really frustrated. And you know, ultimately, I can't imagine how Ted would feel if he said no to that gig at this point, which obviously has made him a really rich man. But it's interesting after watching the Full Swing app on Scotty to witness what he's doing today, because he is the exact opposite of a hothead. He is measured. When he hits a bad shot, he's on to the next. Does Ted deserve some credit for this? What have you seen as far as the evolution of simply the controlling of emotions from the world number one right now, Scotty Scheffler?
Yes, Ted Scott gets credit for that. Not all of it. I think that Scheffler's family, his father in particular, and I think Scheffler getting married and his wife Meredith has given him a foundation and a footing that he didn't have before. And, you know, that applies to how many of the rest of us as well, right? And But yes, Ted Scott deserves most of the credit because, again, he is there on the field of play in the moment, dealing with the play at hand in the moment. And he deserves a great amount of credit for that. It is interesting to when you say he's become wealthy doing it. He has his share, his percentage fee with what Scheffler did last year would have put him in the top 20 of players on the money list on the PGA Tour. It's great.
The other duo they focused on was Carl Smith and Sahith Theegala. Really cool story. Carl recruited Sahith when he was younger to play college golf, and then Carl left the program to caddy, and Sahith still went to the school is escaping me, but he still went to the school, played well, and then ultimately decided he wanted Carl to caddy for him. And Sahith, Paul, is one of those guys that at times I watch, I'm like, man, he can be a beast. You know what I mean? Totally, what are your thoughts on his game and how he's evolving?
So I appreciate you asking. There's a little local connection with Sahith. The college in question is Pepperdine, and used to be in the conference with BYU, and so Sahith would come to Provo sometimes twice a year during those years. And so I've been down to Riverside and followed him in the Cougar Classic, and then when BYU hosted the conference championship, and it was pretty clear. This kid's going to make some noise. It was obvious. Now, what's interesting there is when he was in college, he was a lot more rough-edged. And what you see out of him as an adult, a full adult at this point, and a professional with a professional caddy, he's much more refined and much more polished now than he was when he was 20. But again, well, aren't we all? And but it was really clear when he was in college that he was going to be very good. But it's been fun to watch him grow up and fun to watch him mature and become a player who is legitimately and appropriately a crowd favorite. I am a big Sahith Theegala fan, and I want to see him do really well.
I'm looking at the leaderboard here, Cognizant Classic, and it seems like Joel Damon, while we're just leaning into the Netflix stuff, he's not as prominently featured, at least I've only watched 4 episodes, but Joel's tied for 15th. He is now, I think this year there's something different about his approach. I don't know what it is. The Netflix season 2 certainly outlined some difficult personal issues he seemed to be going through. Do you have any insight as to why Joel Damon seems to be, at least in the hunt with most tournaments he's played so far this year?
I wish I did, because he's the kind of player, he's got a lot of talent, but I don't think he has ever fully believed that he deserves to be one of the top 100 players in the world, but he is. And maybe he's just coming to an acceptance of, oh, hey, I actually am this good. There's an interesting backstory on Joel here just this last year. He was the last one he snuck in getting a tour card, getting his full status in the last couple of holes of the last tournament, the last chance to get it here the last fall. And he is the one actually who knocked Zach Blair, our local kid, knocked him out of having a card, and Joel is making full use of this opportunity. He's doing pretty well this year. He's in the mid 50s somewhere on his ranking on the FedEx Tour or the FedEx points list, and so he's making use of the opportunity he gave himself, and that's pretty cool. I respect him for that.
Is Tony in this tournament? I'm looking at the leaderboard. Oh, Tony's not playing.
Yeah.
Do we have it? We have Patrick Fishburne, right? Fishburne's in the tournament.
Yeah, Fish is playing. Fish makes the weekend. He goes 67-70, and he was like T45 an hour ago. but that's going to jump all over the next hour or so. But he'll play the weekend, and which is a bit of a bounce back. Fishburne had one of the most brutal kick in the head experiences, and golf loves to give us those, right? He was T5 after the first round down in Mexico last week and ended up missing the cut because his second round was just so brutal. And Patrick said, look, I just plain played bad. There's no reason for it. I played bad. And that happens. It happens in every sport, but golf, it's pretty bare. It's pretty naked and out there for everybody to see when it happens like that.
All right, Paul, before I set you loose, big show coming up tomorrow. What do we got?
Well, we're going to do some fun things tomorrow. We're going to touch base with John Coolbaugh, the tournament director for both the Black Desert PGA event and the upcoming Black Desert LPGA event. They're on this 6-month cycle, which is really tough. We're going to catch up with Coolbaugh and see how things go in preparing for the LPGA coming to town in May, coming to St. George in May. And we're also going to touch base with some people who are in back of a new economics impact study on what golf means to the economy of Utah. That's going to be really interesting. I'm looking forward to that conversation.
Good stuff, my friend. Well, I appreciate the time. Have a great show, and we'll get you on soon.
Thank you.
All right, Paul Pugmire. Time now for our PGA Tour leaderboard update. It's brought to you by Uinta Golf and Worldwide Golf Shops. Go to worldwidegolfshops.com. You can experience the future of performance with the new Callaway shaping materials and the AI 10-time Smart Face delivering up to 8 yards longer with even more forgiveness at Uinta Golf. As we referenced, right now the PGA Tour is in the midst of its Florida swing, and it's the Cognizant Classic in the Palm Beaches right now, being played at the PGA National Resort and Spa, the Champion Course. And right now, after a 59 yesterday, Jake Knapp followed it up with a 70, but still good enough to have the lead. Jake is in the clubhouse at 13 under. Then it's Matthew Pavone at 12 under par. Doug Gim and Michael Kim, in addition to Daniel Berger and Jesper Svensson, are at 11 under par. Then it's Taylor Montgomery, Zach Johnson, and Ricky Fowler at 10 under par. As you referenced, our local representation is Patrick Fishburne, who will make the cut. He's tied for 48 at 5 under par. A lot of big-time names in this tournament. Jordan Spieth is playing well, in addition to Shane Lowry, but no Tony Finau in this event. All right, 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. We're live today at Tim Daly Nissan, which is 4528 South State Street. Open until 8 o'clock tonight. It's their end-of-year clearance event. Special financing as low as 0%, zero money down, and no payments for 2 months. Great time to buy a vehicle. If you're in the market, stop by Tim Daly Nissan at 4528 South State Street here in Sandy. All right, we've got Spencer Linton and Gordon Monson. That's your 4 o'clock hour of the program on a beautiful Friday afternoon. So keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, we're live today. Tim Daly Nissan at 4528 South State Street. They are open until 8 o'clock tonight. It's their year-end clearance event. Special financing as low as 0%, zero money down, no payments made for 2 months. So if you're in the market for a vehicle, come on by at 4528 South State Street here in Salt Lake City. I thought my wallet had been stolen during the break. It was not. It was in my car, but a moment of panic. And we'll welcome in our next guest, Spencer Litton. Spencer, have you ever had your wallet stolen, or have you ever lost your wallet?
It's funny you ask that, Spence, because yes, and it happened in Miami at a five-star hotel, no less. I was hanging out 10 feet away from my wallet and my phone at the pool, turned my back for probably 15 seconds, and came back, both gone, done. It was not easy getting home, not a great trip to Miami.
Would you rather lose your wallet or your phone?
Oh, man. Probably my phone, because obtaining all of the government-issued IDs and things that go along with licenses and being able to get on a plane and go home, like, that's harder to replace. Like a phone, right now with the technology we have, you can just straight wipe it. Like, you can wipe it. And as soon as it turns back on, like there are some safety protocols put in place. So for me, it's a phone. Do you feel differently?
No, I think that's probably the right call. I mean, answer is C, neither, because it will ruin your weekend and cause a lot of anxiety. But I'm good. Got my wallet. We're locked in, man. How you been? Spencer Litton, BYU TV on the program on a Friday. How you doing, man? Everything good?
Yeah, doing well. Interesting time of year, no doubt, with spring football kicking off for the local teams here in the Beehive State, and then the home stretch as we push towards March Madness. It's a little chaotic, but yeah, really, really entertaining time of year, no doubt about it.
For sure, and it's been pretty remarkable to watch the evolution of this basketball team after a pretty rough start. And you know, it was easy to see early on, even in some of the losses, like there's juice on that roster. There's offensive talent on that roster. If Kevin figures out his rotation and if they start to gel, you know, they could be a dangerous team. So let's just start with your overall thoughts now. 5 straight wins, which is the most in BYU's Big 12 adventure. Started in Morgantown, and then you guys have West Virginia tomorrow. What stands out most about the past 5 games for BYU, Spencer?
Yeah, I think you have to start with BYU finding out how to handle the rotation and everybody truly buying into what Kevin Young is trying to do. And there was some resistance at first. And I understand why there was resistance when you look at a guy like Dallin Hall and him going from starter last year on a team that was a 6th seed in the NCAA tournament and finished tied for 5th in the Big 12, and everything that they did in Mark Pope's final year at BYU. Like, to be relegated, that's a tough pill to swallow. And then to have to kind of reinvent yourself with what Kevin Young wants you to do, and how do you mesh with this lottery freshman phenom in Yegor Deming, and how do you split minutes? It just took time, and I think I shared it with you when you called me a little over a month ago when BYU was struggling a little bit, and I shared an analogy, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I used getting a new set of golf clubs and then being given a professional swing coach, and you have all of the nicest equipment, an incredible swing coach, and you have access to all these courses, but just because you get a new set of golf clubs doesn't mean automatically you're going to show up at the course and just be immediately better. Like, oh, I'm better. I have new clubs. I'm better. I have a swing coach. I'm better. It just takes time to work with said coach and your new equipment, figure out what you got to do with it to then go out and play your game at the highest level possible. And so it's just taken time. And now he has locked in that rotation. And it is a deep rotation. They can go 11 deep on the bench and are doing so regularly, with a couple of guys playing, sparse minutes here and there between Trey Stewart and Mihailo Boskovic. Those guys will come in and give BYU a change of pace to go along with the 9 regulars, and it's just been really, really interesting and entertaining to watch him and his staff hone in on what is working best. And obviously during this 5-game win streak, they've been able to flex a little bit and taken a little bit of luck for sure down at Arizona, but outside of that, they've just been playing really, really high-level basketball, and we're talking about a team that is starting to shoot it well. 11 made threes per game, almost. That's an insane number for a college team. But this is what BYU brought Kevin Young in to do, as one of the most brilliant offensive minds in the game.
Since you brought up Arizona, my guy, we're gonna lean into it for a second here, okay? So look, there are a few things that are true. Okay, there are a few things that are true, and we're not great at that in this country, at acknowledging a few different sides. The officiating wasn't awesome, and BYU was on the wrong side of some calls. But I listened to you, and I've listened to Shep and Greg and Spencer, my man. That was not a foul at the end of the game. It just wasn't. And look, credit Richie, steps up, knocks down the free throws, and there was inconsistent officiating, and BYU was on the wrong side of some calls. But the final play, my man, you got to help me out here. That just wasn't a foul. It just wasn't.
It's tough to make that call in that scenario. No question. Like, it benefited BYU. I'm not shying away from that. I guess my point was, and maybe I didn't portray it the right way in how I said it on the show, but it feels like Richie was very, very aware of how that game had been officiated, and so he chose to try and initiate something in a game that was poorly officiated, and he's a really smart player to try and take advantage of how that game had been called. In 99 out of 100 games and scenarios, you're right. That is not a foul call, but because it was so poorly officiated, I thought, from start to finish, and Arizona getting calls and BYU getting questionable calls, it kind of didn't surprise me. But Richie's a really good player. He sold it. It wasn't a foul, but he did his part. Still had to step up and make some really, really high-pressure free throws, and BYU was lucky to get out of there. But sometimes you need a lucky break like that. And so, yeah, not dodging that. I know that the alternate angles came out, and that kind of gave me pause where it's like, okay, well, they kind of knocked knees a little bit, and there's a little bit of a hip slide there, but it's in slow motion, and like, the officials got one chance to look at it, and I know Tony Padilla's had his history with Utah and BYU for better and worse. But yeah, I'm not going to shy away from it, man. Like, you're right. It's not a foul, but given the way that game was officiated, I was not surprised that it was called a foul.
Yeah, and you hang 96 in McHale. You deserve to at least be in the mix. And I'm not taking anything away from the win, because I'm never one to believe that one call is enough to explain away a result, even if it's that call at that time. Let me ask you this, and I don't know if you guys have addressed it on the show, but yeah, you know my background, and whenever there's this story about another chant about bleep the Mormons or whatever it is, like, I don't shy away from the conversation. Some people do. And I do believe this is such a double standard in so many different ways. And I'm not a big fan of whataboutisms, but if this was bleep the insert religion here or bleep the insert ethnicity here, this would be a national story. And look, I talked about this on the show. I have a pretty unique prism and experience of being an LDS kid from Salt Lake City, Utah, suddenly planted in the Northeast at the age of 11. And this was 1990. And I was treated like a total outcast. This was far before the church had a footprint back there that it does now. And I know what it's like to be around people that simply don't know culturally what LDS people are about. And there were kids that were clearly getting information from their parents, asking me questions like, I would go to school and be like, I'm pretty sure my dad has only the one wife, and it's my mom. That's been the deal the entire time. I know you guys are asking me, like, and so I understand that there is a large portion of our country, even in the year of our Lord 2025, that view the prism of LDS culture as odd and unfamiliar. But it can't mean that chants like that are okay, and it shouldn't dissuade people like us that have a microphone from talking about it. I just wonder how those things land down there with you and your fellow BYU media members and people down in Provo.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing this up. And truthfully, I think I have been conditioned over the years to just kind of let it roll off your back and love them back and turn the other cheek and don't worry about it. But at some point you have to say, okay, now that's just crass and cheap and lazy. Like, can we have a conversation about this? Because the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and how they're called, obviously referred to still as the Mormons, are just an easy target. I hate that excuse. Well, you're just an easy target because you're weird, so just deal with it. It's just part of the deal. Like, at what point do we say, well, maybe we don't like it? Maybe it's hurtful and it's annoying. But for a long time, and even still now today, I kind of have come from a standpoint of, well, you know, they hate what they don't understand, and let's just go ahead and turn the other cheek and love them and hope for something better. But again, at some point, you have to stand up and say, hey, we don't like that. We would appreciate having a conversation about it so that it doesn't happen again. And so I was happy to see some of the conversation that came from this. And I super appreciate Tommy Lloyd and think he is an absolute class act as Arizona's head coach. Not only one, did he address the bigger concern with the game after a terrible foul call hurt his team and cost his team the game in some ways, but he pointed to the bigger picture of my team's got bigger issues. And then later on down the week, as he's preparing for another game, he talked about how his fans need to be better and you need to not take those shots. And so it was just kind of this cool galvanizing moment between the staffs at Arizona and BYU, and for some of Arizona's fans to come out and say, you know what, it's not okay, and we will be better. So, yeah, we're making a little bit of progress, but it is an unfortunate banner that so many fan bases have joined in recent years. And you would think that in 2025, as you pointed out, we could be better than that. But here we are yet again.
One more thing on this, and I'll ask you the question that you asked my guy Shep today. I want you to dish on a little tea. You ready for it? It was a perfect question to ask Shep, who's such a TMZ honk. But I wonder if part of this, and we're just talking out loud here, because honestly I don't know if there's anything here. But, you know, the LDS exposure through pop culture over the past 3-4 years, I don't think it's done the church a lot of good things. I just don't. And, you know, whether it's Real Housewives stuff or the Hulu show or the junk stuff, you know, the Sister Wives show, I wonder how much of that people are digesting gives them a completely inaccurate idea of the way the culture is actually, you know, in reality when you experience it. Do you think there's anything there, Spencer?
Yes. And you know what? People like the strange and abnormal and weird. This is
Yeah.
what they gravitate to. These are the most streamed shows, unfortunately, in broadcast media, because the real story, Spence, is probably a little boring. How often do we hear, yeah, I grew up with some Mormon neighbors, and they were super nice, and they always respected the laws of the land, and they were cool, and they didn't drink, and they were responsible, and I never had an issue with our families interacting. It just seems kind of boring. Like, yeah, it's good. I choose that all the time, but it's not worthy of what the world perceives as entertainment value. No one's signing up to watch a show when it's just, oh yeah, those people are nice, and they help me do my yard work, and they shovel my walk when I can't do it, and they went down and did some yard work for this elderly grandma in our yard, in our neighborhood. We don't hear enough about that stuff. I wish we could cast more of a light on that. But I truly believe that it just comes down to, well, what's weird and what's kind of outlandish? How do we build a show on it so that we can make money and sell advertising and we can all get rich? And so it is uncomfortably becoming more and more common to see the things that you are pointing out and those shows, because people just want extremes. They want extremes, and they want to talk about it, and they want to gossip about it, and it's kind of an unfortunate diatribe on what our society is becoming in broadcast consumption.
Yeah, well said. You referenced Tommy Lloyd, and, you know, Tommy, after the BYU game, how he handled that. And, you know, Utah, we've had a change up here. As you know, Craig has been relieved of his duties, and two of Craig's sons are with the program. One's the director of ops, the other is a walk-on. And unfortunately, Josh Eilert's first task was to take Utah into McHale, and there was no way that was going to go well. But after the game, I thought Tommy Lloyd handled it, again, just perfectly, where he pointed out Craig's two sons and how they showed up for work. And that would be, I mean, look, my dad wasn't a coach, but he was an executive, and we had to uproot our family 4 or 5 different times for his career. There's a personal side of this that we don't do a very good job covering. because fans want to know what happened and what's next. But I wonder from afar down there, your take on what we've had going on up here with Craig losing his job.
Wow. Well, let me say this. All of my interactions with Craig Smith, and they've been limited, have been super positive. I really, really enjoy that guy. I think he is an outstanding basketball coach. It won't take him long to find a good landing spot, whether that's as a head coach somewhere else or as a high-level assistant, I don't know. But he's going to find a good landing spot because I think he's a fantastic human and a fantastic basketball coach. I was a little shocked, Spence, because I thought that he was finally starting to get some grounding. Like when Utah beat Kansas State, or at Kansas and Kansas State back-to-back, and they're middle of the pack in the Big 12, I thought, okay, maybe they're on the cusp of something. Maybe they give them one more year to try and build. And I thought maybe Utah is going to be a tournament team next year if he can build his core and keep his people and use this momentum in the Big 12 with those two big wins against the Sunflower State. I thought, cool, good for Craig. They're figuring some things out. And then they lose at UCF, and then all of a sudden he's out of a job. And so I was stunned. I hate it for the Smith family, especially when I thought that he had finally started to figure some things out. And I think he was getting a lot out of the talent that he had up there. And if you had given him some real NIL support and true support from an athletic standpoint, that he could go out and do some damage and recruit, that they were on the cusp of being an NCAA tournament team again. Well, reading the tea leaves, I'm guessing Utah absolutely has one or two clear candidates in mind, maybe three, and they want to return to, I believe, some of those legacy guys that will bring an immediate injection of enthusiasm and support and booster donations into it. So obviously if they can hire a guy like Alex Jensen, it would be the best case scenario. Trust me, from a guy who's watched what Kevin Young has done as an NBA assistant with his connections and ability to develop NBA players and recruit those guys, I think Alex Jensen would be a home run hire. Hate that it comes at a time when I felt like Craig had started to, in some ways, turn a corner. But hopefully Utah makes the right hire, and I hope that it's Alex Jensen. I think he is dynamite. I don't know what the true interest level is there, but he's going to pick a time to leave Dallas and the NBA as an assistant and take this job at Utah. Man, that'd be a huge get for the U and returning to them to their basketball glory. Man, you and I, we grew up. Utah basketball was everything. The Rogero sweater, the Final Four one. It was so fun. I don't care. Any BYU fan is kidding themselves. They didn't think that wasn't fun to watch those guys, Andre Miller and Alex Jensen and the Johnson brothers do their thing. And before that, Keith Van Horn. Those were glorious years for Utah basketball. And this rivalry is better when they are good at basketball.
Well said. All right. I have a football question, but before we get there, what do you think? So, last year's team I thought was playing pretty well entering the NCAA tournament, and I thought if they could knock down some shots and get the right matchup, they could win a couple of games. And it was the Day Grant kid in Duquesne last year that ousted BYU in the first round. And I think it's been, since Jimmer? BYU's not won a game inside the round of 64. They won a first four in game or whatever. But when I watch this team this year and when they are at their peak, they feel more dangerous and more complete than the team a year ago, and they're deeper as well. So if you expand your imagination, what's the ceiling for Kevin's team this year, NCAA tournament style?
Yeah, fantastic question with a lot of layers there. I agree with you. This team, do they not have a little bit of the 2020 vibe before we sadly were shut down by that whole COVID pandemic?
Oh, yeah.
I get some vibes from this BYU team that I had with that team. They shoot the three incredibly well. Their offense is super efficient, so fun, engaging. They're defending enough. Like, they're not a bad defensive team. They rebound the ball well. All of these things that I heard about the 2020 team and how BYU's dangerous. Nobody wants to see BYU in March. I'm starting to hear a lot of the same things about this team, which is exciting. And so, yes, this team is better prepared to go and win an NCAA tournament game. I don't know if BYU is going to be granted the consideration by the tournament selection committee that they had last year, even though I think they're a better team this year because of the non-conference slate. And Kevin knows it. They didn't beat anybody in non-conference play, relatively speaking. They have since caught fire and have added plenty of meat to their resume in the Big 12. But I don't know, part of me just believes that the selection committee is going to be like, yeah, but BYU's non-conference. Like, we need to punish them a little bit for that. So I wouldn't be surprised to see BYU, if they win 2 of the final 3. I'm not going to ask this team or expect this team to go to Ames and win against Iowa State, especially if Iowa State gets some of their scores back and Curtis Jones specifically. Like, that's a tough ask. But if you win 2 of the final 3 and you beat West Virginia tomorrow night and then handle Utah on senior night and you go to Kansas City and you win a game there, then I think BYU has absolutely done enough to be given real consideration at worst as a 7 seed. And what 10 seed or what team in the NCAA tournament wants to face 7 seed BYU, who recently just won at Arizona and just humiliated Kansas and had won as many as 6 games in a row and are playing their best basketball this season? I think they could be a very, very dangerous 7. You said ceiling, so I'm going to give you a ceiling. I think the ceiling for this BYU team, because of the non-conference play and because of no Sunday play and how the seeding principles work, probably a 6 seed at best.
All right, buddy, before I say you lose, the Salt Lake Tribune did some reporting this week on the Royal Blue Collective and some changes that were made. And I just want your take on it. Crew Wakely obviously left the program with a little bit of an axe to grind, right? And I always make sure to keep that in mind. And there was another starter who claimed that there were some cuts and some changes made to the collective. And obviously some players not thrilled about it. The Trib did a follow-up where they were able to talk to some people from the Royal Blue Collective who are saying that there will be some changes this year, coming off the heels of a very successful season. I just need to know your understanding of this story and kind of where we're at with the collective down in Provo.
Yeah, again, I mean, to be frank with you, like, I don't know Crew on a close enough level to understand everything that he said and why he said it. I still like Crew. I think he was a good player for BYU and he did some nice things, but you're right. He had an axe to grind. So whenever something like that begins, you as well as I know that as a member of the media, you have to take it with the proverbial grain of salt. Like, okay, something happened. He didn't like it. Let me see what I can find out. And so when I went down that route to kind of figure out what was going on in the Wakely camp, I was largely shut out and said, you know what, we're kind of keeping it to ourselves. What's in the paper is out there, but, like, we're not going to add any additional comments. So I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to get anything from Crew's people. That's fine. Let me reach out to the Royal Blue Collective. And what I was told was, we're processing everything. We're figuring out where there were some discrepancies and some misunderstandings. And I was assured that they are trying to do everything with as much integrity and clarity and transparency as possible while still working with an institution that is private. It's like an impossible balance at BYU. I'm not saying it's perfect. Okay? It's not. So clearly there was something that happened and a misunderstanding. And I'll say this. Everybody needs to get everything in writing and put in contracts and stop giving these handshake agreements. Like, handshakes are not going to cut it anymore. Like, everything needs to be documented. We've gone from amateurism to, like, minor league professional sports with many college athletes. Get everything in writing, get everything in a contract so that you can guarantee it, and there's legal ramifications if you don't uphold your end of the bargain. But I wish I had more for you. I reached out to both sides and was given a very political answer from the Royal Blue Collective and then was kind of shut down on the other side. So I wish I had more than that to add, but I'm adamant that there will be an effort to have things laid out that are legally solid, that are on paper, guaranteed contracts, because I truly believe that BYU wants to do it the right way, and they don't ever want to put anybody in an uncomfortable position like they did, or was reported allegedly they did, from Crew Wakely and then this other, athlete or these other athletes that are now coming forward.
All right, buddy, I always appreciate the time. Please, as I always say, give Shep a wet willy and a purple nurple from me, and we'll get you back on soon, okay?
You got it, brother. Hey, I'm glad you found your wallet. But if you don't, listen, if you didn't, all it takes is a simple text message to me on your phone, bro. I got you. I'll carry you for a little bit.
No, I appreciate that. I might just send you my Venmo now if I know that's the deal. Thanks, buddy. Have a good weekend, okay?
You too.
All right, Spencer Linton from BYU TV. Always appreciate his time. We're live today at Tim Dahle Nissan at 4528 South State Street. It's their special year-end clearance sale and special financing as low as 0%. They're offering cars for zero money down and no payments for 2 months. So if you're in the market for a vehicle for you, your child, or your spouse, 4528 South State Street, come on by and say hi. All right, we will catch a quick break. Coming up next, my old radio partner, Gordon Monson, stops by. And then we'll launch into the 5 o'clock hour of the program on this beautiful Friday afternoon right here on ESPN 700. All right, we are live today. Tim Dahle Nissan at 4528 South State Street. Come on by and say hi. It is their end of the year closeout special. Even though it's the beginning of the year, they're still having it. Special financing as low as 0%, zero money down, no payments for 2 months. My next guest, back in the day, would be sitting next to me on these remotes often. Gordon Monson. Happy Friday, sir. How are you?
I'm just fine, Spence. How are you doing? Man, those were good old times. You know, you look back, I have fond memories. I'll say it that way.
The first memory I have of a remote we did together, I believe, was out in Bountiful or Centerville. And we showed up to, I think, a Target, and they didn't know we were coming, so we had to set up outside. And it was snowing, and you went inside Target, and if I remember correctly, bought a sweatshirt that did not fit you very well. Is that right?
You know, the saddest part of that whole story is that it didn't fit me very well, but it fits me now.
Oh, so you still have the sweatshirt?
I still have it. I decided I'll try this on, see how it is. You know, and it was like, you know, it's like that bride that tries on her wedding dress 20 years later or whatever. But anyway, yeah, it fits me pretty nice now. But it was too big back then. Oh, well.
It was very cold from what I recall. I'm trying to think of other remote stories. You know, we did all those Papa John's for years where we'd be like right next to the oven and leave smelling like pizza and freezing cold.
You know, that one you bring up, though, I mean, I've never experienced that before where we're loading into the store and essentially the store manager is pushing us back out the door. You know?
Oh, yeah.
We're out on the curb in like minus 20-degree weather. We powered through though, man, because we could have walked away, but no, we don't walk away.
We're men of the people, Gordon. We don't walk away. I mean, come on. You know, we're here to serve. We're here to serve. So tell me, what? Good.
I wish, Spence, that we could pull back the curtain on everything that ever happened, either in the studio or out on the road. I mean, we could write a book.
Oh, yeah. A behind-the-scenes look at the old radio days. I'm not sure how many people anymore would be all that interested. But the old school listeners, Gordo, I don't know how many of them are still around, but the old school listeners would be interested, that's for sure.
Well, all I know is fun, so I'm glad you're still doing it, man.
For sure. No, I appreciate your time. I always missed having you, you and Craig in. Hopefully we can get that going back soon. But there's a lot going on, Gordo, and you've been writing about a lot of it. So let's start with the news that has dominated the headlines up this way, and that's Craig Smith losing his job. Year 4, 6-year contract, and so now Utah some dead money to Craig after paying some dead money to Larry. And there's a lot to this. And, ultimately there's a human side of it. Feel bad for Craig and his family. A little $5 million golden parachute doesn't hurt. But what's your reaction to the news? And then we'll move into what you think comes next.
Well, one thing that comes to mind on a personal level is especially basketball coaches, I don't know, and football coaches too, they're kind of power guys. And they some of them just aren't the nicest guys in the world, I'll say it that way. But Craig Smith was, he was a nice dude. I mean, you wish the best for him and his family, and on a personal level. On the professional level, things were getting slowly better. But it just wasn't, I guess, good enough for the proud history of the University of Utah basketball program. And, they were picked last in the conference, and they were 7-9 when he got the axe. The timing of it was a little suspicious to me because I wondered if Mark Harlan had it in for him from the start of the season. And I don't know. I don't know this for a fact, but it seems like they were better than maybe what they were thought to be. And Craig Smith was a big part of that. And then all of a sudden he's given the axe after the loss, and they had won some games that people didn't expect them to win. And who knows what would have happened if he had finished strong with that team, Spence? I don't know. What would happen if they went down to Provo and beat the Cougars? I mean, and then you're going to fire him after that? That would have been a more difficult situation. But that's all speculation on my part. I have no idea what Mark Harlan was thinking, other than the fact that what the Utes were doing on the basketball floor and what they were drawing in as far as fans go just wasn't good enough for him.
All right, so, and like you, I'm not entirely sure what all the reasons were. I did hear from two boosters, one of whom you know, that this was I don't know what percentage, but in some part this was booster-driven. And by booster-driven, I mean some of the biggest of the big dogs. You know, they just weren't necessarily happy with the direction. And Gordon, while I certainly met the news with sympathy for Craig and his family, there was part of me that said, okay, you know what? Finally, somebody has stood up and said, this is not good enough. They have not made the tournament in almost 10 years. And for a program once upon a time that made the tournament every year and nearly won a national championship but just ran out of gas against Kentucky, part of me likes the fact that whatever the reason was, like, this standard should not do for a basketball community that's used to greatness.
Yeah, and I well said, Spence. And you know, some schools you'd say, okay, this is good enough, kind of getting better each year, but that's good enough. We're not going to do anything about it, and that's frustrating for fans to be put in that situation because they want results yesterday. And it was too slow, and I know some of the boosters. I think I know some of the boosters of which you speak, and I know for a fact that they weren't happy. They think the University of Utah is a better basketball program than was being exhibited on the court, and in a day and age where, just like Craig Smith said, it's a bottom line business, man. You got to win, and you got to win at a certain level, or else you're gone. And he's gone, but it's hard to feel sorry for him considering the $5 million parachute that you mentioned.
So now we move over to what's next, and it's interesting to consider a few different avenues here. So, you know, one of the avenues that athletic directors and school presidents take when you're a P4 school and a Big 12 school is you look at the smaller conferences and the smaller schools, and you try to figure out which coaches are doing a good job, and they've kind of earned their way to figure out what's next as far as the bigger level. And sometimes that doesn't happen until the tournament. You know, a small school gets a automatic qualification, they win a couple of games, and a bigger school poaches their coach. Jeff Borzello put together a list that he thinks Utah should look at. It's UC San Diego's Eric Olson. It's Nico Medved from Colorado State. It's Eric Henderson from South Dakota State. Leon Rice, Boise State. They just beat Utah State. Russell Turner from UC Irvine. So that's one avenue. And the other avenue that seems to be getting a lot of traction is the former Ute pile, which includes Johnny Bryant. Alex Jensen seems to be the front runner from what I can understand. And then Andre Miller's coaching in the G League. So I want your thoughts on what you think Mark should do. And then ultimately, one of the things I've tried to consider is I'm not usually a win the press conference guy. I don't think it matters. The long game of building a culture is what matters and finding your way back to winning. But this basketball community, Gordon, needs such a shot of life that part of me feels like go all in and get Alex and put Andre next to him on the bench. And I would imagine if that's the announcement, a lot of phone calls would be made to the basketball building to put deposits down for season tickets. But what do you think Mark should do next as far as the avenue he should look at?
Well, the first option that you talked about, well, that's how Craig Smith got there, right?
Yep.
I mean, he was winning games, and you saw what he did at Utah State, and he was winning before that. He built a program, and to bring him into Utah, and it didn't really light the fire you're talking about. And so I really like those last three names you mentioned, and I think that would be the way I would go if I were Mark Harlan. Now, Harlan seems to like to sort of put on a national search, but I mean, he hired Craig Smith. I would go for one of those three. I really would. Alex Smith or Jensen, you and I know him well, and he's a fine man, and he's a really good basketball mind with that NBA experience. And it makes me wonder sometimes that when you look at what happened at BYU and Kevin Young's success going in there and having that NBA experience and that being a big draw for certain athletes who definitely that's their goal. They want to go to the NBA, right? So why wouldn't you talk to a guy like Alex Jensen? Why wouldn't you talk to a guy like Johnny Bryant? or Andre Miller. I mean, those are exciting names, and I think that's the way I would go.
So I want to get your take on the pressure that Mark Harlan finds himself in with his hire. And, to juxtapose it a little bit, when Tom Holmoe announced that he was stepping down after 20 years down in Provo, one of the main things that Tom can hang his hat on is the hires he made for his basketball and his football programs. Bronco, Dave Rose, Kalani, in addition to Mark Pope and Kevin Young. I mean, there's an argument to be made that Tom went 5 for 5. Now, I know there are other sports. I'm not diminishing them and the importance of them and the other hires, but Mark, in his tenure, has made one hire on the football and the basketball side, and it was Craig, and obviously didn't work. The succession plan for Morgan to take over, I believe, was in place before Mark got here. And, it hasn't been the greatest year for Mark Harlan, who I like and respect, and he's been nice to me. But that post-game diatribe after the BYU-Utah football game didn't land very well. He was reprimanded. He was fined. And I wonder how you would articulate. This feels like a very big decision for the athletic director at Utah. What are your thoughts, Gordon?
Couldn't agree more. With everything that's going on in college sports right now, and with the changes that are afoot, and the importance, and still these schools are angling for that 20, 30, 31 time when the TV deals are up and people are positioning themselves for the most advantageous situation they could find. So yeah, this is big. I don't know what's going to happen when Kyle Whittingham retires. Is Morgan Scalley going to pick up the football and just take it from there? You and I know Morgan. He's a smart guy. You would think he would be able to do that. Again, with a football program that has a proud history, so you'd think he'd be able to do it. In basketball, the Utes have been struggling, like you said, for quite some time. It's a basketball school. It used to be a basketball school, right? And so I think he does need to nail it. He better get this one right. He embarrassed the university during football season. And I think from the reaction that I've gotten from fans, when they found out that Craig Smith was being fired, a lot of them thought that Craig Smith was doing okay, not great, but pretty good. And there was a lot of vitriol, I thought, toward Mark Harlan, which is interesting that the athletic director would get that kind of heat. So, yeah, I would say get this one right, especially at this point in time.
Since I have not been able to catch up with you the past couple of weeks, I wonder what your thoughts are on the announcement that after 20 years, Tom Holmoe is exiting stage left as BYU's AD, and your thoughts on potentially what's next down there. Shane Reese, the president of the university, was present at the press conference they held, and he outlined his criteria for what the BYU athletic director needs to meet. Plenty of good candidates out there. So your thoughts on the 20 years with Tom in charge down there, and where do you think BYU goes next?
Tom just did a fantastic job, and he's a good guy. I know some people in the media got a little angry because the access to him was a little difficult for some folks. I had his cell phone on my phone. I felt like I could call him whenever, but that wasn't the way it was in every direction. I liked him. I liked the job he did. You mentioned the success that they made the transition into the Big 12. The optimism in Provo right now is if not off the charts, it's really high, and Tom deserves credit for that. He made that happen. I remember sitting in a pizza joint in Provo with Tom, and we were talking about what his vision was for BYU sports, and it's pretty much exactly where they are right now. I mean, nobody's perfect, and it can get better, I suppose, but I think he pretty much did exactly what he set out to do, which were lofty goals, and he got them there. As far as what they're going to do moving forward, this is kind of an interesting thing. You mentioned Shane Reese. I believe he worked for a time advising the Philadelphia Eagles, didn't he? I mean, he's got a sports background. And sports, we've seen that boosters down there are willing to shell out big money, and the university is allowing that to happen now. And so BYU, I have heard BYU mentioned more in the last month or two on a national level than I think I have maybe since 1984. And So I mean, I think they're making this a priority, and they could go in-house. They go with Santiago, or it'd be interesting though if they went outside and got somebody who was from a different realm. Whether they'll do that or not, I don't know. I do know that Santiago had been given more and more responsibility by Tom over the past couple of years, and so if I were a betting man, that's the way I would lean. But there's I talked to a big booster down there recently, and he said they're swimming in money. They're swimming in money. And when you have that advantage, who knows who you might draw in?
Yeah, I mean, look, and that allows us to transition over to some good reporting by Kevin Reynolds over at your spot of the Trib. And, Gordon, I talked to you about this when I started to hear the details of Kevin Young's contract, and I started to hear the details of his staff. And then the rumors are that Yegor Demon and Cannon Catchings are both seven-figure players. And then on First Take, A.J. DeBonson, his father, dropped that they're going to BYU. And then the information comes out that it's like $7 million for 5 months of basketball. My first reaction was, well, what are you doing for Kalani? What are you doing for the football program? And look, this is interesting because according to the good reporting of Kevin and everyone over the Trib, there was a meeting last year prior to the start of the season that was held by someone named Min Kim. I don't know who he is, but he is one of the guys in charge of the Royal Blue Collective, and it's Isaiah Bogna as well as Crew Wakely. And Crew left in his wake, no pun intended, a lot as he left. You see what I did there? He obviously was not happy with any of this. But none of this information looks good for the collective, and none of it looks good for the football program. The Trib today actually released a follow-up where the Royal Blue Collective is going to make some changes for the better when it comes to the football program. My first reaction when I read this, Gordon, is, man, Kalani did a great job with a roster full of players that weren't getting paid as much as their competitors. But ultimately, this lands in the space of the college football landscape providing no guardrails, and therefore everybody's flying blind, man. I'm not here to cast stones at all, but I wonder what your reaction was to these stories.
Well, first of all, when you said what you said about Kalani, you were wondering if they were going to get taken care of. Well, Kalani was wondering the same thing. I mean, the success he's had, he deserves more money, and if there is more money there to be given out, then he's earned that. As far as the collective goes, I think they are correcting that because, like I said, that's why I was talking to this booster, and he said there's money available down here, So if there's money available, then share it with your football team, and you got to get that job done in this day and age. Now, with revenue sharing, who knows what shape that's going to take, and will there be like a limitation on how much is given out, or will it be shared and then you can pile on top of that? I don't know how that's going to go, but it comes down to money. I mean, it really does. That is the college game now, and there's a lot of people who don't like that. It bothers them, the old school, loving the amateurism, but that's just gone. That genie's out of the bottle now, and it'll never go back. And so, you got to have the money to make it happen. I mean, it's funny. You mentioned DeBonsa. BYU, I mean, that shocked. That literally shocked some people, even though BYU was on their list. But think about how that happened. Think about, there were all kinds of things that came into play there. He was down at Utah Prep. He happened to be his favorite player, happened to play for the Phoenix Suns, and Kevin Young happened to be a coach who that particular player, KD, loved. And then on top of that, Danny Ainge, who's a BYU alum, DeBonsa grew up a huge Celtics fan, and he's connecting with Danny Ainge, and this thing is all coming together to BYU's advantage. But look at some of the other players that are considering going to BYU now and are already have committed to them, players that BYU in the past never would have gotten. And so there's some money there. It just depends on how it's going to be distributed.
It's a new day, man. I'll tell you what, Gord, I appreciate the time, buddy. Have a great weekend, and let's get you back on soon.
You too. Okay, Spence. Have a good one. Thanks.
Gordon Monson, my old radio partner, longtime columnist from the Salt Lake Tribune. I always appreciate his time. All right, before we wrap up the 4 o'clock hour of the show, launch into the 5 o'clock hour of the program, we are live today at Tim Dahle Nissan, 4528 South State Street. You guys don't want to hear the deals from me. You want to hear it from Rich, the sales manager out here. What's up, Rich? How are you?
Yeah, 10 years in the business right here at this store, and what a great time to buy a car.
Okay, so tell us, this is like your year-end clearance event that you've extended through the new year. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say. And, you know, in Japan, the year ends in March, so we want to get as much as we can done right now. And with it being Valentine's month, you know, we've got interest rates as low as 0%. Most of our clients like no money down. All of our clients love the fact that they don't have to make a payment for 2 months while they're catching up from the Christmas situation. And, you know, end of month, this is the last day of the month. It's always, no matter what you heard from anybody else, we're under the gun to get as many cars in tonight as we can. So, if you're listening and you want to get a car, come down here tonight.
Open until 8 o'clock tonight.
We'll probably close at 10.
Okay, great. So special financing as a reference, 0%, no money down, no payments, 2 months. Do you guys do the lifetime warranty over here as well?
Yeah, we do.
The forever warranty, right?
Forever warranty. As crazy as that sounds, as long as you own that car, you've got a warranty on that transmission. That costs $5,000 to replace. Yeah. On that engine, it might cost $10,000 to replace. And the turbos on these cars, we have a lot of cars with turbos on them. And if it's our used cars as well as our new ones, if you buy it and you own it forever, you've got a warranty on it forever. It costs nothing.
It sounds, honestly, Rich, too good to be true. We were here last month across the street, and Koo, the GM, said this is not a moneymaker for us. Like, he said they were having a meeting. Should we still do this because we're losing money? And you guys elected to continue. Like, it sounds too good to be true, but it's actually a real thing.
Yeah, we've been doing it for 5 years.
Yeah.
We were the first ones to do this in this marketplace. Yeah. When we did it, we expected every dealership in the state to join in. And none of them
have.
No, but we've grown our customer base with it. And that's what we're all about. We've been here for 55 years. You can't get a better place to buy a car at. Tim Dahle is a fantastic individual, and it flows right down through his organization. And this is the original store right here on State Street, 4528 South State. This is the original store. It's the best place out of all of Tim's places to get a car.
Gotta love it. Hit me with some specific deals. Like, which cars do you want to highlight before I set you loose, Rich?
Well, I'll tell you what. We want to highlight the new Kicks, which is a brand-new model, all-wheel drive. We never had that before. And if you're looking for an all-wheel drive that's affordable, this is your bad boy right here. Under $30K, all the goodies on it, and the latest styling, especially for our younger crowd. But we also have the Rogue, the Pathfinder, the Murano. The Armadas are brand new. We sell more of those than anything else, but we still have our vintage, the Versa, the Sentra, the Ultima. They've been around forever and are all-wheel drive now. The Frontier truck, we've been moving those like it's nobody's business because it's the last of the 6-cylinder trucks. You go by my competition, they're all 4-cylinder turbos now. Then, of course, we have the GTR, and I actually have one for you guys out there that are listening. You want a GTR? This is the last year for them.
Oh, wow.
That's it.
Very nice.
There won't be any more, at least for a few years. And so you're going to get one right now that's part of that whole group of GTRs that came out and were improved over the years. We have one. It'll probably be the last one we get. So come in and see it. I got 3 Zs here, and not to mention the electrics. Okay, I got the Aria. I got the Leaf. We made the Leaf back in 2012. We're one of the original manufacturers to make an electric vehicle. We know them better than anybody else. And God bless, if you want a used one and you want a Tesla, you want this, you want that, you want the Kias, you want the Hyundais, I have probably in inventory 40 to 50 EVs here that qualify for the forever warranty. So.
I got to say, before I set you loose, my Northeast boy radar is going off. Where are you from?
Oh, Buffalo, New York.
What? Okay, I knew it.
Yeah, there you go.
I knew it.
You can hear it, yeah.
I'm like, this isn't a Salt Lake guy. I could hear it. I just couldn't land on it. Rich, great to meet you, man. Thanks for having us out.
Pleasure, Spence. Thanks.
All right, come on out. Rich just outlined the deal. It's 4528 South State Street. Bunch of vehicles priced to move. Special financing, 0%, no money down, no payments for 2 months. So come on by and say what's up. Our good friends out here at Tim Dahle Nissan at 4528 South State Street. All right, 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. Final hour of the show's next on ESPN 700. All right, let's get it. Drive at 5 time. Excuse me, on a Friday afternoon. Another beautiful, beautiful day. Another beautiful spring-type day today to kind of cap off a spring-type weather week that we've had. Going to be some cool weather next week, but we are about to say goodbye to February. And can we agree? Good riddance. January done, February done. Bring it in, group. Good job. Proud of everybody. We did it. Final day of February. And happy Friday to you. Congratulations. You made it weekend time. Hopefully you have something fun planned. It's a jam-packed weekend of local sports, of course, national sports as well. And we're live today at Tim Daly Nissan at 4528 South State Street. My guy Rich, Buffalo Strong, stopped by to outline all the deals they have going on. It is their closing year, their clearance end-of-the-year event, and you can get behind the wheel of your dream car, SUV, EVs. They're all in stock. It's Tim Daly's Forever Warranty, by the way, which is a real thing. If you buy and own the car, you have the warranty for the life of the vehicle. Nobody else does it, so come on by and say hi at 4528 South State Street on this lovely Friday afternoon. The 5 o'clock hour of the program today is brought to you by our good friends at Burt Brothers, which is a one-stop shop for reliable repairs and maintenance from tires and alignments to fluids and brakes. Burt Brothers offers a full range of automotive services tailored to meet your needs, now offering value tire options such as Americas and Summit tires, with tires starting at just $69 and warranties that go up to 70,000 miles. Stop by a Burt Brothers or Tire Busters location or schedule an appointment today to experience the trusted service that has made them a Utah favorite for over 3 decades. Burt Brothers, doing it better. So a busy weekend in local sports starts tonight. Some old friends are in town. Rudy Gobert, Joe Ingles, Mike Conley, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. The Minnesota Timberwolves roll into the Delta Center to take on the Utah Jazz for a 7:30 tip. We have BYU and Utah women's basketball tomorrow at the Huntsman Center at 1:30. Utah State is on the road to take on Colorado State. That's at 2 o'clock on FS1. RSL welcomes in the Seattle Sounders for the home opener, at least on the MLS play side of things, for Real Salt Lake. And then the Utah men welcome in Arizona State tomorrow at 5 o'clock. And, of course, you can hear that game on our station. We actually have a busy, busy Saturday. It goes like this, starting at 8 o'clock. It's Utah Golf Radio. Paul Pugmire stopped by as the PGA Tour is in the midst of their Florida swing today. Patrick Fishburne made the cut. He will play the weekend. Tony Finau not in the field. So a little Utah Golf Radio, followed by Utah women's basketball as they're taking on Brigham Young. UVU taking on SUU, and then Utah men's basketball taking on ASU. And on Sunday, we've got a fun Sunday morning NBA game, which is the Celtics taking on the Nuggets. So, started the show off today. By the way, some breaking news. Joel Embiid is going to miss the remainder of the season as a result of a knee injury. Not too surprised there. Started the show off today just kind of recapping and putting a little bow on a busy week when it pertains to the news cycle for the Utah men's basketball team. So Craig Smith, of course, as we found out earlier this week, was let go as the head coach for the Utah men's basketball program. And the candidates continue to kind of make the rounds, and the direction that Mark Harlan will take is still kind of up in the air. I don't anticipate an announcement with the Utah head coach probably until, a few weeks after the offseason. And one of the reasons, and I want to be clear, I do not know what Mark is going to do. A couple of different avenues. We've talked about the names of some of the coaches that are coaching kind of at smaller schools right now that have done a very good job kind of in their lane, guarding their yard, as the kids say these days. And oftentimes a P4 program like Utah, a Big 12 program like Utah, will monitor the jobs that some of these younger coaches are doing at smaller schools. And should they succeed, go make them a job offer. Now, that essentially is what Mark Harlan did with Craig Smith, right? And so we'll see what the NCAA tournament brings, because oftentimes it's March Madness that changes the lives instantly of some of these young coaches. If they are able to lead their team to the NCAA tournament and win a game or two, then the big name jobs come open. Now, Utah's not the only big name job open. The Indiana job will be open as Mike Woodson has stepped down. The Miami job will be open. A lot of people think that's going towards the direction of Jai Lucas, who's an assistant at Duke. You also have the Virginia job open after Tony Bennett abruptly announced his retirement in late October. Florida State is open as well. As far as jobs that could be open, a lot of people believe Bobby Hurley might be on his way out at Arizona State. Mike White may have saved his job with a late surge for the Georgia Bulldogs. Fran McCaffrey in Iowa is thought to be on the hot seat. And who knows what happens with Hubert Davis in North Carolina. He did sign an extension, but there's a lot of noise around them, and including the Minnesota Golden Gophers. That job might be open as well. So Utah will not be the only job that comes open. But the list of candidates, according to Jeff Borzello, ESPN.com, who covers college basketball, you guys have heard me talk about them. We'll run them down again. UC San Diego's Eric Olson, Nico Medvedev from Colorado State, Eric Henderson from South Dakota State, Leon Rice coaches Boise, and then Russell Turner coaches UC Irvine. So that's one route. Now, the other route that we've talked about on the show quite a bit and we'll continue to cover until the announcement is made, does Mark believe a bench with Alex Jensen as the lead dog and a assistant coach with, as far as Andre Miller and maybe some other former Utes go, does Mark believe that that is not only the way to win the day? Because you would win the day with that. You would win the press conference. As I've said all week, and I'll continue to reiterate, I feel like this is a basketball community that for the most part has been dormant for a long time. And one of the reasons certainly is the evolution of the football program, but I will not, and I never will, kowtow to the idea that you have to be one or the other. You can have successful programs in both basketball and football. Utah has before. And across the landscape of college athletics, there's Auburn, there's Alabama, there's Georgia. I could keep going. There are plenty of schools that have elite football programs and also have elite basketball programs. But because it's felt like this is a basketball community that has not had a ton to get super excited about for a long, long time, I do think winning the day is something that Mark should consider. Now, in addition to winning the day, you want to make the right hire to play the long game. You want to make the right hire for a coach who is going to build this thing from the ground up. And make no mistake, that's what this is going to take. And do you find the right culture builder? I kind of roll my eyes at the culture stuff at times because typically we do not hear about your culture until after a successful run, right? You start winning, then we hear about heat culture. You start winning, we hear about the Patriots way, right? So winning comes first, and ultimately, if you're Alex Jensen or if you're Richard Pitino or if you're Eric Olson or if you're Pat Riley, it doesn't matter the name. Every single one of these coaches will kick the tires with Mark Harlan, in addition to Taylor Randall, with one question and one question only, and that is, economically, am I set up for success at the Utah basketball program? They have got great facilities. They've had great facilities for a long, long time. And ultimately, this comes down to NIL and paying players. But nobody's going to take this job without the pledge from Taylor Randall and Mark Harlan that they have what they need in place, finance-wise, economic-wise, to set up a coach for success. And I honestly do not know how much support Craig did get and how much he did not get, because the problem is even coaches that clearly have deep pockets NIL-wise, they all talk about the same thing whenever they're in public, whenever they're speaking out in public, whenever they give press conferences. Coach Witt talks about it almost every time he's out in public, the necessity for the community to invest in the product to help out with NIL. So I honestly don't know. I don't think I've ever heard Craig really be front-facing and complain about it. I've heard a lot of people behind the scenes say the basketball program does not necessarily receive the NIL support that it needs to keep up with their Big 12 peers. I cannot corroborate that. A booster did tell me this week that the Utah basketball program matched the St. John's offer for Davon Smith. Davon, of course, rolled in here and was so good last year, breaking Jason Kidd's Pac-12 triple-double record. And, of course, he's gone on to play for Rick Pitino and St. John's in Midtown Manhattan and Madison Square Garden, something that Utah basketball cannot offer. But whether it's Alex Jensen, whether it's one of the names on the list that I gave you, whether it's Johnny Bryant, whether it's Andre Miller, first and foremost, they've got to know that they're taking a job with a program that is set up economically to support them, to give them what they need to win at a high level. All right, we will catch a quick break. We're live today at Tim Dolly Nissan. Come on by at 4528 South State Street. And we roll on. Coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. All right, wrapping it up. Final segment of the day, final segment of the week. Happy Friday. Congratulations. It's weekend time. Special thank you to Tim Daly Nissan for hosting us today at 4528 South State Street. Great spot to get a vehicle. They're open until 8. But Rich, their sales manager, Buffalo Strong Rich, said they might not close until 10 because they're moving a bunch of vehicles. They've got to clear out the deck to make space for their new inventory. And they're offering 0% financing, 0 money down, and no payments for 2 months. It's real. And their lifetime warranty is, their forever warranty is what they call it, is a real thing. When I first heard about it, I'm like, that's a sales tactic. That's not true. But it is. If you buy a new or a used car from Tim Daly, you have a warranty on that vehicle forever, for the life of it. Doesn't matter how many miles you drive, so definitely come out and check it out. All right, some sad news. Gene Hackman has passed away. And according to reports, he had passed for quite some time before they found him. Why is that sports related? Well, I still believe Hoosiers is an incredibly entertaining basketball movie. And, of course, Gene Hackman played the great coach Norman Dale. 4 passes before you take a shot, Porter, 4 passes. So rest in peace to the great Gene Hackman on this Friday.
Yeah, I actually forgot that was him in that movie. I was like, I know Gene Hackman, but what movie's from? It's that's like the main one that came out. But earlier today, I was kind of racking my brain trying to figure that out.
Why do you strike me as the type of player that ignored the 4-pass rule before he took a shot? Yeah, you were a black hole. I knew it. You were not a good teammate. Were you at least nice to your teammates?
Actually, I led the league in assists in the
You
Dimple
liar!
Rec
You're
League in
a
sixth
mellow.
grade.
You're a mellow fan. I don't believe that for a second. You were a black hole. You were a chucker, as Kramer would say.
I weirdly kind of went through some phases because I really did lead the Dimple Dell Rec League in assists one year, but I did
awesome.
kind of turn into a microwave, shoot it when I got it, get to the rim, do that stuff. Yeah, no four passes for me. I'm trying to make something happen pretty quick.
All right.
There's a shot clock, Spence.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just believe in playing ball the right way, but I'm old school. All right, reminder, tomorrow, busy day on the station, 8 o'clock, Utah Golf Radio, 1:15, Utah women's basketball versus BYU, 4:30, Utah men's basketball against ASU. Then on Sunday, we've got the Celtics-Nuggets game, which could be an NBA Finals preview at 10:30 a.m. here on ESPN 700. Jazz in action tonight. Busy weekend of local and national sports. Porter, what comes our way on a Monday edition of the radio show?
Yeah, enjoy the weekend. Have a good one, and join us back on a Monday. Tom Haberstroh for the NBA Daily Assist, as he does each and every Monday. We'll catch up with our guy Brian Dunny on a Monday, reacting to RSL, obviously the CONCACAF elimination and more. Bill Riley will stop by to talk some Utes over the weekend, and then we'll recap the NFL Combine with one Sam Monson. And as you requested, I'm out to both LeBron James and Jordan Schultz.
Great. So hopefully we'll get both LeBron James and Jordan Schultz next week. I was caught off guard when Howard was like, well, you need to ask LeBron. I'm like, dude, I don't really have the lifeline to LeBron right now, but thank you, Howard.
Hey, we got Dave. We got Dave McMenamin.
Yeah, we got Dave.
We're one text away from LeBron James, really.
That's a good point. So we're out to Dave Chappelle, Ricky Gervais, Louis C.K., LeBron James. I guess I'll put Jordan Schultz in that category. That feels weird.
Jordan's been on the show before.
Yeah,
he's
true.
texting me back, but yeah, we'll see if we can get him on.
All right, so we'll see if we can get big-name guests next week, try to do a better job. But with that, we'll say goodnight. Special thank you today, Emeka Anelli, Howard Beck, Paul Pugmire, Spencer Litton, and Gordon Monson. Jam-packed show. For any of the sound you may have missed, ESPN700sports.com. Download the app. ESPN 700 app is available for free in the App Store and the Google Play Store. And then for what we do in our space, podcast page, it's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's available wherever you get your shows. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things, give us all the stars. It helps. For Porter and Cynthia, you can see her at the RSL game tomorrow. RSL taking on Seattle. My name is Spence Checketts saying goodnight. Happy swiping. We'll talk to you on Monday right here on ESPN 700.